welcome along to the latest episode of the Shortgrass Kildare Nationalist Sports Podcast. Myself, Jerry McNally, in the host seat today with Pat Costello absent today. We have a three-man team, and joining me is Tommy O'Connell and Richard Commons. We're looking through a kind of really busy period in the Kildare GAA calendar. Apologies that we had no show last week, but these midweek games have played havoc with our recording schedules, and ironically enough, here we are in a midday recording slot after no midweek games this week. But plenty to talk about, certainly, and lots to look forward to, and we certainly will do that later in the show. But we have some bits and pieces to reflect back upon first, and we're going to go all the way back to last Wednesday for our first section. And to Kingspan Breffni in Cavan for the Kildare Under-20 Leinster Football Champions, who went up north to take on Tyrone in an All-Ireland semi-final and ultimately defeated by 5 points. And Tommy, you were there. What did you make of that game? Obviously, Kildare disappointed after they gave it a right go in the second half, but just left themselves with too much to do.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The first half was just it was frustrating because there wasn't a wind there. Anybody that was there knew that. Like, there was plenty of showers mixed into it as well. But like, a wind in Breffni Park is a serious thing, as we've all seen over the years, because it's a bowl. You're right down underneath everything, and wind, it catches the ball and carries it. And Kildare they just couldn't get shots off. The more the half went off, the more I was worried, because I knew Tyrone would come out like in the second half. They'd be thinking, if Kildare could bring any sort of a lead into half time at all. But Tyrone must have been delighted at half time, because they didn't have to worry about too many of those 2-pointers coming in from Kildare. I know Jimmy Lynch knocked over one, I think, in the first half. But it was disappointing from that way, and the energy probably wasn't there that we've seen in recent weeks. Again, the extra bit of time for Tyrone, the extra break, the week turnaround for Kildare. They've had a busy schedule. A lot of these young lads as well, it takes a physical toll, but a lot of them are under pressure as well in exams and stuff. So, they could have been drained. But up to half time, it was disappointing. But they give them some go in the second half, in fairness. They obviously just, they just said amongst themselves, we have to just absolutely go for this, and they surely did. It looked really good there for a while. Until the goal, the second goal, of course. The first goal was an absolute cracker from Tyrone, in fairness. I think it caught Charlie Carroll slightly. I think he took it so early that it was, well, I'm repeating that now, because I was talking to Rory Lawler's dad after the match, and this was his pickup on it. He was dead right what he said, that the Tyrone man took it very early, probably caught Charlie out, and that's why he went over his head and he was falling back kind of. But it was a raspberry finish. But the second goal was an absolute killer, because they worked so hard to get back into such a good position against the wind, taking good points, really taking the game to Tyrone. Ultimately, it was that second goal that was just that too much, and then it was all a bit of a scramble at the end. Understandable, you're chasing your season at the end of it. You're trying your best to get back into it. But it was just too much claw back in the end. I felt very disappointed for them, but they had a great season other than that.
Yeah, Richard, I think you were watching on TV back at home, but watching on, it felt to me like as if Kildare were almost overly respectful of Tyrone in the first half, nearly. Like they were very patient in their play, but almost to the detriment that they were allowing Tyrone to set up defensively and not maybe taking the risks that you need to do to break through those defensive lines. And then when it's supposed to have to throw the shackles off, particularly in the first 15 minutes of the second half, like they really had Tyrone rattled, and you couldn't help but wonder, if Kildare had taken that approach from the first half when they had the conditions behind them, that maybe it would have been a different result on the evening.
Yeah, and obviously Tyrone come into these games with quite a reputation at this stage. They were going for their third All-Ireland in a row at this level. I don't actually think this team has kind of the same star quality as some of the others, and they came in on the back of a fairly average Ulster campaign, although they obviously finished strong. So I don't know, was it respect, or was it just the legginess of the schedule? And I think, you've probably said it on the podcast before, traveling to Cavan on a Wednesday night, a week after the Leinster final, I think that's difficult, and that's the wrong call from the GAA. I think this game should have been played at a weekend, for these lads that are doing exams and what have you during the week. I think it was ridiculous to put it on a Wednesday night in Cavan. But that said, it's the same, for pretty much for both teams. I think Tommy's kind of summed it up there, just, my impressions from watching it. We kind of lost it in the first half, and then we almost won it back again with that fantastic comeback at the start of the second half. But that goal just killed it, stone dead. I think that was the end of it really at that point. But it's been a very good campaign from these players. I think winning back the Leinster title, and just I think there's 3 or 4 of them have emerged maybe as potentials for the senior team over the coming years, at least 3 or 4 of them. And I think that's at the end of the day, that's what under 20 is all about.
Yeah, Tommy, Richard raised that point there. Like, obviously, we know the situation involving the abandoned game between Kildare and Westmeath that forced a knock-on of a week in Leinster, and that probably ultimately in the calendar led to that 7-day turnaround. But I'm kind of baffled why this game was a midweek game. Like, thinking back to 23 when Kildare played in the All-Ireland semi-final, I think it was actually 3 years to the day. Actually, it was the 13th of May back in 2006. But that obviously was at the weekend as well at the same venue, and I'm not quite sure. Obviously, Kerry and Roscommon supporters who played on the same night in Tipperary in Hurlers, they had their saying, it was at Limerick, was it? No, it was Hurlers. They had their own kind of argument with the GAA scheduling as well, and it's certainly not conducive to either side. As you say, these are young lads, some of them leaving cert students, the ones who aren't, majority have college exams, and like really difficult to get up there. You're restricted what time you can go in terms of if lads have college and everything else, and it's something that the GAA probably need to look at.
Yeah, I mean, as difficult as it was for ourselves in Tyrone, I mean, Jesus, Roscommon and Kerry, that game went extra time. I mean, you're looking. I mean, I was getting back late, and we all knew it was going to be late. And you take it upon yourself to go, but like there's families there, and there's parents going that have probably younger kids as well, and you're trying to move stuff. It's completely unfair. And if you want to showcase this, like this under-20 championship, it's a long way from minor to senior. Put it down, and the minor championship is obviously, it's stable there. It's been there for decades, but this is where the actual next generation are coming from, and this competition should be pushed. Like, look, the finals in Croke Park this year, so if they're able to do that. Like, I know our final was in Cavan. There's been finals in lots of different grounds over the years, but it's in Croke Park now. They need to review it, and work it around obviously the exam, the college years, or the college schedules and stuff, because like, sure to God, they look at it and they say, geez, a Wednesday in the middle of May, these lads are going to have exams. Let's put it on a weekend. And if that means putting it on a weekend where there's a lot of senior fixtures, so be it. It has to be a weekend, and it has to be, showcased correctly and all that. It was annoying. Like, I mean, there was obviously a small crowd there, and there could be no complaints about it whatsoever. So I met people in Dunshaughlin in the garage coming home, and you can tell by them, like, they're obviously disappointed, but God, it's such a long journey for Wednesday night. Like, it's absolutely madness. So the GA need to seriously have a look at it, and they need to take in, like, there's no way this can happen next year, because it's crazy. It's completely and utterly crazy. Every one of those lads is in college or school, every one of them. And they have to be fair, and they have to take into account the training loads that these lads are doing as well, the long season that they've had with their colleges, with the under-20s, the summer coming up. Just a big review of it, Jared. Hopefully it changes next year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Richard, you mentioned some of the players maybe who will be pushing on. Like, some of the players in that squad, some of the players in that starting team, hopefully this is the first of 3 years at under 20 level, the likes of Senan Gallagher, Ronan Kelly, Callum Keaveney, who's in the picture there. Like, they're very, very young, but for some of them, obviously, it's their last time as under 20 footballers. I know Brian Flanagan has certainly been there personally, at least in the All-Ireland semi-final and the Leinster final, if not more, the games as well. So he's obviously having a close eye. Like, would you expect to see any of those players in the short term, even be involved in maybe a Division 3 campaign for Kildare next year?
I'd like to see. I think we brought in Owen Cully from the 20s last year. I think he was probably the only one, was he, that came in for the tail end of the Tailteann Cup campaign, and that must have been beneficial to him. I'd certainly be looking at the likes of Ben Ryan. Even someone like Daniel Colbert could maybe, gain something from being at least on the panel over the next couple of months. As they go through the however many games we have in the Sam Maguire. We'll come to that shortly, but I don't know if there's anyone you could necessarily just throw straight in to the side at this point, but there are players there that I think you'd like to see brought in next year's Division 3 campaign. There's no harm to give them a grounding for the next couple of weeks, I think. The likes of Colbert and, Jimmy Lynch is another, obviously, who starred in this campaign. He's probably in the one position where we maybe need less, if everyone's fit, we probably don't need a corner forward as much. But, he's some...
A left-footed free taker is always handy to have, though.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, with Brian McLaughlin, if he's playing, and Lokeman has tended to take a lot of them from that side. But, yeah, I mean, he'd certainly add something from that perspective.
Was there anyone who stood out, Tommy, over the duration? Put away that mug.
Sorry.
Flashing that badge around here. Anyway, is there anybody that stood out to you in terms of more immediately in terms of making an impact at senior level? Obviously, we'd hope in the duration of time that the majority of them will get at least get a dip in and have a chance to show what they can do it in the senior squad. But more immediately, would you see anybody there making a step up? Obviously, Colin Moran and Liam Kelly, but particularly Colin Moran in the very immediate future could be involved on Saturday evening.
Yeah, very true. There's plenty of players there that you can see in the next few years. I know when you say immediate, I mean, let's be honest, the first one that comes to mind is obviously Ben. Not only with his ability, but his attitude as well. What he'd be able to bring something like that to a senior setup. But it's what you're constantly looking for, and obviously we're all looking at midfielders in Kildare at the moment. Considering it seems to be something that we're struggling to really nail down to get the conveyor belt midfielder. So when you look at, obviously, before TJ picked up his injury, he was having a wonderful season. But then you see how Rory Lawler slipped into the midfield there, played extremely well. He's a wonderful player, and you saw him for the Larry's Intermediates last year as well. So he has experience of playing that adult football, for a couple of years, which is great for him. And then obviously, Colin Moran, you've Ronan Kelly. You've Ronan Kelly there, who was an absolute sharpshooter all year. Again, Ronan's going to benefit again from a bit of football for Athy this year. A bit of senior football, he'd be nailed on, more likely a nailed on starter anyway. So, Evan Boyle in the middle is a wonderful fielder of the ball. I went on about him on the last podcast that we did, but Evan is a good example of somebody that, you get full focus should be on getting these lads now the next level of conditioning as well. To really start building them up to get them fully ready for senior inter-county football. Because when you have the raw ability of someone like Evan Boyle, you really need to harness that. That's maybe something that we've fallen down in a little bit over the past few years, that we haven't brought these players with their raw ability, brought them on and have that development path through. So the fact that I didn't answer your question, would there be anybody to come through? I mean, as I said, the obvious one is Ben, but it's not I don't think it's a lot different than last year. Last year, you had Talton Cup. He was able to bring on Owen Cully against Tipperary, down in Clonmel. So, you're not going to get that opportunity this time. So maybe for themselves to be in and around the panel, you see the extended panel, you see lads following the senior team, like injured lads and all that. It might be no harm to bring in a few of these young lads and bring them around, bring them to Galway, bring them wherever else we're going after that. So, looking forward to seeing how they all get on.
Yeah, and it should be remembered just when you flash up that squad there, that some of the older players that of that squad, the more experienced ones, the likes of Joey Cunningham, Donegal Kinch, Senna Murphy, they aren't involved at all. So they're players that we didn't really get to see any impact at all this year. It's under the 20 squad due to injury that maybe will still have huge potential for the future. But yeah, the very well done to Niall Croner and his background team, Emmett O'Keefe and everyone else who's involved there in that squad. Certainly they brought great joy, and it was a real shame, I suppose, in many ways, because they won that Leinster title, and even talking to Niall afterwards, his thoughts were straight away on an upcoming All-Ireland semi-final. They barely had time really to enjoy that Leinster success. So hopefully they have, since that exit from the All-Ireland series, at least come together and really enjoyed that Leinster success, because it's something to be cherished. They're not easily won, and they're Leinster champions forevermore. And as I said, hopefully only the start of a Kildare career for many of them. So yeah, I
think there's a good few of them, Jared, that are still under 20 next year.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you'd nearly merge it. The transition might be a lot better for next year. Like, it might be stronger. Like, the way I look at this is, when we lost to Tyrone in the All-Ireland final in 2022 up in Carrick-on-Shannon, that was a brilliant Tyrone team. And they were like, they had Canavan on it. They were brilliant, and they outclassed Kildare. They really did. Like, we knew that leaving it. I thought Kildare were the better team the other night against this Tyrone outfit. And I will see how Tyrone get on, obviously, in the final against Kerry. But Kildare need to understand that the result didn't go their way in the night. A couple of things went wrong. But for the large parts of that game, they were the better team against Tyrone. First time in a long time I've seen a Kildare team be better than a Tyrone team. So these lads need to remember that for next year and give it a good rattle again.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the younger players have been the outstanding players. When you look at Ronan Kelly and Shannon Gallagher, who I thought was superb as well against Tyrone too. So I mean, that's their first year under 20. But yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, congratulations to Niall Cronin, and thanks indeed as well for his cooperation with us in the media as well. He's always great to talk to us after matches, win, lose or draw. So yeah, very well done to Niall and all his team. But we move on then to last Saturday, and we have a lot of what ifs of what might have been to look over the last week. And this is another one. And Richard, I know you were listening in to our commentary on KFM, and were telling me at halftime to stop getting carried away down in Nolan Park, because we were starting to dream a little bit, and probably getting carried away is probably the right term. But at the same time, you know, when you're only a point down at halftime against the Kilkenny side, who certainly were off form in terms of their shooting, and obviously the big thing was to be down a man as well, and Kildare were going to turn around and have the win in the second half. Probably an opportunity that Kildare will wait a long time before they have again, but brought back to earth with a real bang-dang in the second half when Kilkenny sharpened up, and they pulled away in the end. A couple of early goals really took any sort of belief out of Kildare, and the heads dropped a little bit. We haven't seen this happen in the Kildare side before, and TJ Reid inspired his teammates, and they ran out comfortable winners. But the real disappointment, I suppose, was the news that Offaly turned around things at home against Wexford, and that we won't have that do or die clash in the final round on Sunday when Offaly come to Newbridge. And instead, Kildare's fate is already sealed.
Yeah, and it really was just a relentlessly difficult campaign, wasn't it? You know, it just shows what senior hurling is all about. And I know people say the Leinster Championship isn't cut on the Munster one, but you know, it's for a team coming up, and you know, I wrote a little bit about it in the Nationalist this week. It just is almost impossible to get to that level and get yourself into a position to stay up. I think Offaly are the only kind of traditional team that have gone down at any point since this round robin was introduced in 2018. So, you know, it's just so tough. Obviously didn't see the game itself, but I, you know, got a good sense from it. It sounded a little bit like the Galway game, only maybe a little bit more extreme, in the sense that Kilkenny got those 4 goals in the second half after we were in a good position at half time. But you know, Kilkenny are going to do that when you have someone like TJ in the attack. You know, it must have been a pleasure for you in a way to commentate on him playing against a Kildare team, but certainly for those Kildare players to come up against him, they would have learned an awful lot from that particular encounter. I think it sounded like Ryan Boren for the first time was probably under pressure this year, because he's had such a fantastic year. Tough going, like it is tough, and you really, as you say, you really would have wanted that final encounter against Offaly. But really, I think Brian Dowling alluded to it afterwards. I think the game ultimately, as it turns out, we missed out on was the Wexford one early on, when we were very close there, and they were rusty, and you know, they weren't, as it turned out, that was their only win of the campaign. You know, so they're not at their normal not at their normal standard, if you like. But it's just so hard for McDonagh teams to come up. It'll be the same for, be it Carlow or Laois, whoever comes up next year, it'll be the same. You really can't see, unless one of the traditional counties really drops off, as Wexford seem to be doing a little bit, then it's very hard to see any Joe McDonagh team staying up. And it's something it's something Leinster really need to address, I think. And I mentioned it again in the Nationalist during the week. You know, why are we accommodating Galway and not trying to bring on the kind of 4 Tier 2 Leinster teams that are in that next bracket? You know, should Galway not move into Munster perhaps? You know, is it not their turn to accommodate Galway? I know that, you know, the people will say that weakens the Leinster Championship in terms of competitiveness, but, you know, what is Leinster GAA for? Is it not there to bring on the Tier 2 hurling counties as well? Why aren't they doing anything to encourage that?
But it might weaken in the short term if you were to replace Galway with some of those Tier 2 teams.
Yeah.
But the idea surely would be in the long term that the likes of Kildare, Carlow, Laois would develop and eventually get up to that standard, and in a period of time that you might have a much stronger and competitive Leinster Championship.
Exactly. But I think something Pat's spoken before, I think as well on here, suggesting that teams coming up, you know, kind of get a 1-year relief from relegation. I don't know how practical that would be, and you know, you might end up with just an accumulation of teams in the top championship. But you know, something needs to be done to kind of bridge that gap, because it is a yawning gap between McDonagh and the Leinster Championship, as we've seen.
Yeah, Tommy, I'm not sure about that suggestion of kind of no relegation, because I think the threat of relegation does add a competitive edge to it, and I mean, again, looking at the Munster Championship, I think a Waterford side who have a very, very poor record over a number of years, and obviously no threat of relegation. Tipperary not going fantastically well there either, but they know there's no threat of relegation, and obviously even the worst Munster side certainly is a better team than probably half of what is in Leinster, at least if not all the Leinster sides at the moment. So it is difficult to know what to do, and when you look at that kind of graphic there, you see Kildare played 4, lost 4, -51. It's a fairly stark kind of stat, but that doesn't tell the truth of how competitive Kildare were for the majority of those 4 games so far. And you would like to think that there are people over the Leinster Council and Leinster GAA that are wondering, is it time to make a change, and is there something that we could do to maybe make it an 8-team championship, even a 10-team championship, and have 2 separate groups, and I don't know, the bottom 2 fight off for a relegation place. Obviously that has a knock-on effect down to the championship, you know, that, and that would have to be restructured as well. But I know, even looking at Waterford, mentioning Waterford as well, that they are very frustrated to be out of the Munster Championship and to be finished their season in the middle of May, when the Comparative Football Championship is only getting started, you know, at the end of this week as well. So there's a lot of counties dissatisfied for different reasons, but obviously looking at Kildare and Leinster in particular, you know, that's definitely something that needs to, you would imagine, have some sort of a reshuffle in the very near future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's lots of commentary about it over the last week or two. Obviously, it's put to the front for the likes of us, because, you know, it's so raw for us after we saw the effort that went in last year, and then we just see ourselves get relegated. I think in the short term, you know, I do like the idea of a 7, 8, 9, 10 team Leinster Championship. I mean, especially if, you know, if you have like a Laois or Carlow, I think we should look at 1B as well, and look over the next kind of year. Like Kildare stayed in 1B this year, and if that could, I'm not saying that if you stay in 1B, you automatically qualify or anything like that, but it should give a good indication. You know, so if teams can get in there and mix it and kind of hold their own a little bit, then that would show you that, you know, it would make sense to have this, you know, this bigger championship. Personally, in the short term, I think they should absolutely have a playoff between the team that finishes bottom in Munster and the bottom in Leinster. I don't think the Munster Championship should be untouchable like that whatsoever. I think I understand that it is, you know, it's the jewel in the crown of the GAA, and they all love it. It's all wonderful, but let's look at it. You have to be realistic as well. It's unfair. It is what it is. You can't just say, well, they're better than them, so we're going to do this for them. We want to make sure to protect them. Kildare should be playing Waterford in a playoff. I just think that would be. And listen, I said it in some forum last week, and of course got launched on by all the Munster hurling, saying that your Leinster hurling is shit. Why the Munster? It's just at the end of the season. It's just a nothing game. I said, well then, at least you'd be guaranteed that you'd be staying in the Munster Championship if you're that confident. So if Waterford were that confident, they shouldn't bother. Put out your second team and see. You'd probably still, you know, think you'd hockey Kildare. Give them the opportunity. Give Kildare that chance because Kildare put up.
What would happen? Sorry to cut across you. What would happen then in the case that it's two Leinster sides as it is this year in the McDonagh Cup? If in the unlikely event that Kildare did beat a Waterford in such a relegation final, that it was two Leinster sides down below, that would be the first question that people maybe would ask.
Then get rid of the bottom team out of Munster. Then
throw Galway into Munster. That Galway
yeah, I mean, you change it around, but like if somebody gets promoted and they deserve to be promoted, absolutely they go into the championship, they deserve to be in. But like the question is always there: if Kerry happened to win a John McDonagh,
that would have that's what would have really made it look ridiculous, wouldn't the Kerry playing a Leinster?
Exactly, and that's what clearly would happen because God, you wouldn't be putting Kerry into Munster, crazy talk. But I just really think that this goes for, just say it happens next year that it's Laois. And Laois are hurling really well at the moment, and underage are hurling well at senior. If they went up and they had a really good season next year, a good solid year, and Waterford continue to slide, they should be, given the chance there at the playoff game. So I just think it's a no-brainer in the short term. Just do it. Just make the one fixture, and then look at restructuring it possibly in the future for the other teams. I mean, we all thought that Offaly would be the team that we'd have to play off. We were fully convinced of it, that Offaly would be the same as us and more likely to lose all their games. I know they're traditional hurling county, but they've really, they more than deserved to stay up, and with an outside chance now of getting into the All-Ireland series. So you can't presume what's going to happen. Like if Offaly played Waterford, they'd probably beat them at the moment. So, there's just different ways of looking at it.
Yeah, Richard, looking ahead to Sunday, obviously arrive in, and they probably have more than an outside chance, really, because if they beat Kildare and Kilkenny failed to beat Dublin in Parnell Park, and that is not beyond the realms of possibility, then Offaly would leapfrog Kilkenny in the table and move into that third spot that would get them into the All-Ireland series and knock Kilkenny out of the championship. So it'll be an Offaly side who will be absolutely gunning for victory, and as Tommy said, they've had some excellent results so far. They almost caught Dublin, they almost caught Kilkenny, and then they came strong at the end. We beat Wexford last week, so it'll be a tough game. I'm sure Kildare would love to finish this championship on a high, and certainly they would love, obviously, to get a championship victory in Leinster Senior before they exit the championship. But yeah, it's going to be a tough ask against an Offaly side with so much to play for.
It is, and as you say, Offaly have proven that they belong in that kind of top 3 or 4 there, and probably have surprised some people. I was talking to one of the Offaly journalists at a previous game, and they were really coming into the championship. They were really concerned about that final game with Kildare because they, like us, kind of assumed they'd be battling against relegation at the bottom. So I think they've probably surprised themselves, particularly with some of the injuries that they've had. Obviously, Adam Screeney came back there at the weekend. They've lost Mitchell now, but they've really put it up to those bigger counties, and they deserve to be where they are. It's a tough one for Kildare. I mean, no matter what, what attitude you think you can go into that game with, you're not going to be at the full 100% that you would be if something was riding on it for Kildare. So. I think they'll go out and they'll play with pride, and they might give a bit of game time to some of the lads that are either coming back from injury or have been a little bit on the fringes. But Offaly will be going full pelt, obviously, and this isn't the same scenario clearly as it would have been if it was a relegation decider. In that circumstance, I would have given Kildare a chance to rattle Offaly. I think the likelihood here is, an Offaly win, but hopefully Kildare go out and give it their best shot.
Just I have a left field question for you, Tommy, here now. What do you think of the head-to-head rule? Because Wexford are obviously safe now by virtue of beating Kildare in the first round. Obviously, score difference is massively against Kildare, so it wouldn't really make a difference. But if Kildare were 10 or 15 points better off in that score difference, and theoretically they could go and beat Offaly by 10 or 12 points and then leapfrog Wexford and score difference, would that add more to the final round? Or, because it seems that a victory in the first round, you get an awful lot more than just 2 points when it ends up in this sort of situation.
Yeah, but that means you deserve it as well. I agree with the head-to-head. I agree with it in this. I agree with it at club level. I agree with it at every level. If it comes down to it, how did the match go between those two teams? That team won, then they deserve to be above them. I understand where you're coming from, but that Wexford game still annoys me a lot because I really think we should have won it. The scoreline doesn't do it justice. Wexford were not good. They were just relying on Lee Chin tapping over frees for the whole day. I think we realised in that game that Wexford were poor. I didn't think that they'd finish, second last, possibly maybe third last. But I just, Jared, honestly, when it comes down to that, I think head-to-head is one of the better ways to decide these things. Because if you go on the likes of score difference and you had a team going out to play for nothing in the last game, and another team, there's situations like that. And the reason they head-to-head, just things like that when you get down to club level as well. It's for when there's walkovers and stuff. If a team drops out of a league and another team got a chance to wallop them by 40 points. That kind of thing comes into play. So yeah, I'm all for the head-to-head. Unfortunately,
even though it goes against Kildare this weekend, and Richard, just before we wrap things up, just on the hurlers, just to mention Brian Dowling as well, because obviously it would have been a tricky situation for him going in against not only his native county, but of course he still teaches down in kind of St. Kieran's College down there. Obviously, heavily involved in the schools team, and I'm sure there's a number of those senior Kilkenny players who would have came through the school system that he would have been involved in as well. So a really difficult day for him, but looking a little bit further ahead, and I suppose maybe we will have a better chat about it after Kildare's season is over, but maybe at half-time it felt like Kilkenny would be happy enough to swap him over for the manager straight away, given listening to some supporters that I was eavesdropping on some of the conversations at half-time. But long-term, he's done a fantastic job for Kildare. Going back to McDonagh Cup now, I mean, the last time Kildare got relegated from McDonagh Cup to Christy Ring, that was the end of David Herty's time, and David Herty had done a great job for the spell that he was here. Like, how do you view Brian Dowling's future? I suppose we obviously know what he's done in the past and how far he's taken this Kildare side. How do you think he'll view that step back to McDonagh Cup? And I suppose, like, thinking about it, it's nearly a 2-year thing. It's not, if he does stay on, hopefully he does, and hopefully he's not even thinking this way. But it's probably a 2-year thing, hopefully, to rebound out of the McDonagh Cup and straight back in, and maybe another year then at senior championship level. But how would you view it?
I'd be a bit worried about it. I think the one saving grace might be that we're still in 1B next year. So, we're still getting that high quality opposition from a league perspective, at least. I do think he's going to be in demand, whether it's Kilkenny, let's see how their season finishes out, or, even maybe a Wexford or someone like that. I think one of those higher tier, if you like, counties will have noted what he's done, and I think he's going to be in demand, over the next couple of years. I'd like to think he'll see it through. He'll stay with us and bring us back up and have another go at it. And I'm kind of leaning in that direction and thinking that 1B might help, as I say, to persuade him that it's worth sticking with. He's also got, he's a relatively young team, and I think you look at the strides that they did make and the improvement, particularly this year, both in S&C and just the general skill level. I know we finished bottom of that table, but the improvement in skill level and confidence of the team, notwithstanding the second half on Saturday, has been astonishing almost. So yeah, I the only thing I'd say is it's not going to be easy to come out of Joe McDonagh next year either. I think other teams are starting to improve, like Laois and Carlow, whoever's still there next year of those two. Down have put in some good performances as well. That is by no means a slam dunk that we're going to come out of that next year either, with only one team coming up. So it's a tough ask. I think he's going to be in demand. I think it's not a slam dunk at all that he's going to stay, but I'm hopeful, I suppose.
I think he'd be strong for it. I think it adds more. Sorry, Jerry, just saying it adds more incentive, maybe for us Kildare fans, to want Kildare to beat Offaly at the weekend, because if Offaly beat us and Kilkenny can't get a job done and Kilkenny go out of the Leinster Championship, Derek Ling won't survive that. I don't think, anyway. I mean, he's been there for a few years. He's been there since 2022. So, and as you say, Richard, in demand. Like, we're hoping, that obviously hoping he's going to stay for as long as possible. But in the real world, he will be in demand. And Kilkenny people do not will not stand for not getting out Leinster, or not getting out Leinster is unheard of for Kilkenny. So let's see how it goes. The one quick thing as well on the match, Jared, on a positive note, James Burke coming back. It was absolutely brilliant to see him back on the field after being out for so long, and to score the most typical James Burke point. I was right behind it in the second half, because I was right behind the goals looking up the field, and he just got the ball, swiveled onto his right, bang, straight over the bar. You know, I mean, he's been a loss for the whole year, but just to see him coming back was so encouraging, and he's going to be a huge addition to Naas hurlers and footballers this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What a loss he has been for Kildare. Yeah, very much so, and absolutely great to see him back on the field after almost 11 months out. God, that was so heartbreaking to pick up that injury in the last 30 seconds of that victory in the McDonagh Cup, and the game was already well won. But yeah, such a sport, and fair play to James. He had a couple of setbacks along the way, but yeah, he's done it superbly well. But yeah, again, thanks to Brian Dowling, and yeah, he's been in a strong position whenever it comes to the end of the season, that he's sitting down with the county board to plan for next year, and let's hope that he does stick around. But obviously, still Sunday's game to go, and we were talking to him afterwards, and he said he wasn't sure how much of a motivating factor winning for Kilkenny would be for the Kildare lads in the dressing room, but I think certainly Brian Dowling will be absolutely gunning to, after being the public enemy number one down in Nolan Park, if he'd come away with a victory on Saturday evening, he has very much a chance to get himself into Kilkenny's good books on Sunday if he leads to Kildare to a victory over Offaly. But that is a game to look forward to. Absolutely on Sunday afternoon in Cedar St. Collins Park, 2 p.m, the last round of the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship. So we'll move on again, and less than 24 hours later, we were up in Croke Park, and again, another game coming out. We were left to think what might have been, and probably this was the most gut-wrenching defeat of all, because a 6-point defeat, I think it was 2-12 to 2-6 in the end, was it?
Sorry, you're correct. Yeah, it was.
Sorry, yeah, I don't mind to pick you up on your very rare errors, but yeah, no, 6-point defeat in the end, 2 goals. But that did not tell the story of the game, that Kildare, for large parts, dominated, were the better side, I thought, but too often the final pass, the final shot, more often the final pass just didn't go to hand. And probably the key moment of the game, shortly after the wonderful goal that Aoife Moran scored, was another Kildare attack not coming to fruition, and it led to the first Dublin goal, also a yellow card, a really harsh yellow card to Nancy Murphy in the build-up. And yeah, that was probably the end of the game, really. And in the end, Dublin very, very flattered by the final winning margin, I thought.
Yeah, I know we do say it a lot, but I've said about the under-20s. I thought they're a better team. I mentioned it about the Wexford match in the senior hurlers at the start of the year, but just for long periods, Kildare were the better team, and they were so good. Like for such a young team, you know, with an experienced spine up it, but you know, to really take it to Dublin, and that's what they did. You know, they were so good all over the field. Their defending in the first half was absolutely brilliant. At times, you know, Lisa Shaw was right underneath us, and the Hogan stand, the amount of balls she broke up and bursted out with the ball. And then Kildare's, and they did this in the second half as well. When they come out of the fence, you know, there's no faffing around with the ball or spreading it across the field. Obviously, all training work where they have a runner off the shoulder. So it's pass, runner through. And they're absolutely clued in to the 3 up, 3 back as well. The amount of times my heart was in my mouth, because like, where is she? Where is she going? She was sprinting. I was like, God, I'm going to get caught. And immediately another player would swap over in front of her, right on the halfway line, just so clued in. And so kind of, you know, they had no fear. You know, the problem on Sunday was obviously the shooting just didn't come off. And then Dublin, when they had that half a chance in the first half, especially, you know, they were just popping over these points. You know, Kildare just couldn't get ahead. Anytime they were kind of pushing out possession, you're thinking, they didn't get another score there. Dublin will go down, knock over a point. So that was kind of disheartening. Again, a lot of these Kildare forwards are quite young as well. And I mean, look at Alana Prizeman. You know, she was really, really well marked because they knew the danger she possesses. But she got a half a chance, and she absolutely tore the net out. Fantastic goal, that first goal. And then you look at Aoife Moran coming in, a minor, and her goal, which men, women, whatever, goal of the season contender. I mean, if you put a goal like that in a men's game at Croke Park, the way it flicked up into the top, and it nearly stayed in the top left corner. It was that high up into it.
That was a Daniel Flynn goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It was just, and the thing is that anybody that watches Kildare ladies football, they weren't surprised because she's been doing it all year. And as soon as she came on, I was there with my wife, and I kind of nudged her and I said, "Wait till you see this one. When she gets the ball, she'll go, and she's fearless." The way she took it on, and it was so well executed, top corner job. And God, really, there was 9 minutes left, Jar, and they went a point up. You're thinking this is gone, and it wasn't that it was just suddenly out of the blue, because you're thinking they deserved that goal. They played really, really well. Maybe this will dishearten Dublin a bit, and they'll kick on. But the goals, first of all, the first goal was thrown. The girl on the ground threw the ball out of the scrum. Referee was hunkering down, looking in. She threw it. First of all, even if you wanted the hand pass in that situation, you wouldn't be able to. So she threw it. Ball came out. And it was a good finish. In fairness to Rachel Bennett, she had made some brilliant saves in the Kildare goal, as she has done this year numerous times. She's a wonderful goalkeeper. But the two goals were an absolute killer. Second goal was a brilliant finish as well, light and fast, cut inside, and then tucked into the corner. And it was just, it happened so quickly. And then you're just thinking immediately back there, if they just got that score after the goal, and if there's all these little things, and as you say, the odd pass going astray. I actually thought both teams dealt with the conditions very, very well. It was lashing rain when we were walking in. And as we all know, Crow Park, when it gets wet, it's just a greasy carpet. But the control, like the handling errors were quite minimal. They weren't that many. It was just that final. And Kildare, going into this All-Ireland series, they need to find those scores. Because the scores in the past, you're thinking of Vanessa Dooley or Roisin Byrne, or these are girls that are picking up vital scores, popping over points. Kildare need to find that, and you're looking at the likes of Aoife Ratkin and Lara Kern to bring on these younger girls as well and give them as much confidence as they can. Like Aoife was brilliant in that first. Lara was flying into everything as well, getting her hands on it. But Aoife Ratkin will never turn down a shot at goal. She's having a brilliant year and really coming through as a more experienced player, even though she's still quite young. So they have an All-Ireland series ahead of them now, Jar, and I think they'll get. We'll have a look at the groups in a while. I think they'll get out of that group. I'd love another crack at Dublin. I genuinely, that was Crow Park, and it was a huge occasion, and the weather wasn't great. I just really think this Kildare team has the beatings of Dublin in them. And if they've beaten Dublin, Jared, if they've beaten anybody, I was so impressed with them. Genuinely, they just had and they've been so good all year. They were desperately unlucky to be relegated, as were Dublin. People don't forget that both of them were relegated, but they were desperately unlucky to be relegated. We saw, drawn in Cork, drawn in Waterford, giving away late goals, just little things like that went against them. That again, a lot of this stuff is your own doing, and they're little things that Pat Sullivan. I spoke to Pat last week. He's a very, very driven man, and I was talking to him, and he was like, I don't know, like the interview was up on the ladies' page, but he was very much like Dublin is, don't mind it. It could be Dublin, it could be Kerry. We don't care. We're going to approach it the exact same way as we approach every game. We know what we have to do. I think he said it'll be 70% us and 30% them on what we focus on, and he wanted that extra 10-15% that you need in Leinster Final in Crow Park, and he nearly got it. I'd say he was genuinely devastated because they put in huge work. But listen, really young team, really young team, and an All-Ireland series still to go ahead of them. So season ain't over yet.
Yeah, Richard, actually talking to Pat Sullivan after the game, actually didn't get the sense that he was that disappointed, because I think he saw the real positives in the performance. Obviously disappointed with the result and not to take the trophy, and of course on a huge occasion like that, obviously you'd love to be walking away with the trophy. But I got the sense that Pat Sullivan just has such belief in this young team. I think he said there's only 4 players in the squad who were in the dressing room the last time Kildare played in Crow Park in 2023. And when you think of kind of the experienced players, and Tommy mentioned some of the ones there who have departed the squad since then, it's a whole new wave of players coming through. And players who you would think who are the experienced leaders in this team are still incredibly young. I think Leisha Lenihan told she's 24, like she's the team captain. And I mean, she's probably one of the older ones. I mean, take maybe Lara Curran out, she's probably a little bit older than the rest, but there's very few that will be older than that kind of 23, 24 mark. And even with relegation this year, it's hard not to think this team is definitely going in the right direction. And they have some major scalps, I think, that they can take in the very near future before the Ireland series is out, as they did last year against Armagh. But yeah, in the next couple of years, this is a team who could really achieve big things.
Yeah, I think he's been vindicated really in terms of his decisions. You know, I think we are on an upward curve. I think I was hugely impressed with, you know, any Kildare team that can attack a Croke Park occasion the way this team did. Such a young team as well, and a little bit unlucky in the end, just echoing Tommy's thoughts, you know, in terms of the poor finishing at the end. But, you know, people like Nancy Murphy, I thought was a revelation to me, at least, you know, not having seen maybe all the games this year, but wow, coming in at, you know, last minute as a sub, maybe that was planned, I don't know. But she was fantastic, and, you know, just the whole team just took it to Dublin, no fear whatsoever. And, you know, I think just in terms of him not being that disappointed, I think that's kind of the benefit of kind of separating the provincial championship with the All-Ireland in a way, in that, you know, that you've still got this All-Ireland coming along, and the provincial is, you know, while important in its own right and you'd love to win it, you've still got something bigger to aim for later on. And he could obviously see all the positives from that performance and how unlucky Kildare were at the end of the day not to win it. So, you know, you look at that group there, certainly they'll be aiming to win the Tipperary one. I think we decided that the top team in the group are going to be the Munster winners, so that'll be difficult. But again, like, Kildare were not overawed against anyone in Division 1, so they've no reason necessarily to fear Kerry or Waterford in that particular group. And
they drew with Waterford and lost by a point to Kerry.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. And it's 2 go through, I presume.
Yeah, top 2 go into top 2 go into the quarterfinals, and the bottom team in each group go into relegation semi-final. So there's lots to play for, very cutthroat.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd say they'll be pretty confident going into that.
Yeah, as Richard is saying there, Tommy, a couple of years ago when Kildare were forced into the senior championship, you looked at some of those names and you thought, God, it's a really tough prospect for the team. But as you rightfully say there, you know, in Division 1, they have played all these teams. They've been competitive with all these teams. Okay, they've lost a couple and they've ended up being relegated out of Division 1 this year. But there'll be absolutely no fear for this Kildare side, no matter who they draw in the remainder of this championship. And that goes for the knockout stages too, hopefully, if Kildare can get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they first went up to senior, I'll never forget that relegation final that was down in Carlow against Laois. Jesus, I'll always remember, because Pat Oslo was commentating on it. I always remember the shouts and roars at the end. Nessa Dooley got a penalty, wasn't it?
She hit the bar and scored the rebound. Was that penalty? That was a different penalty.
No, that was a different penalty in hockey. This was one where if she tapped it over the bar, it would have been a draw. It would have been extra time. And she hit the worst penalty she'll ever hit in her life. And it dribbled underneath the keeper and went in, and they won. And that's Nessa Dooley in a nutshell. You know, all or nothing. Just I said it to her. I went down to the pitch. I couldn't wait to get my hands on her. What are you doing? But listen, it was huge for them to stay up. And then we see what they did last year, you know, going to the All-Ireland quarter-final against Kerry. Put up a really good performance against them. As you say, the fact that won't be intimidated. So most of the top teams here, they've played this year. And they've been competitive against every single one of them. There's teams that they haven't played this year, like Mayo, Donegal. They were down Division 2. You know, Tyrone, who they would have got to know a lot last year. Tyrone got relegated out of Division 1 last year, but they would have played them a couple of times last year. But they've played the rest of them. Tipperary, another team down Division 2. But again, Kildare, no Tipperary. They've played them over the years. So they should know that they're not going to be intimidated by any of these. And as you say, you know, Richard, you were talking with Nancy Murphy, a brilliant example of it. Like, she was my player of the match at the weekend. It was between herself and Lisa Shaw in my eyes, but I thought Nancy was brilliant. And to bring her in, like they were crying out for a midfielder like or maybe the partner Gillian Wheeler in there. and now you've Ashley and Hugh as well, who has started a couple of games. So they're battling with each other for that midfield, but then one is back up to the other then as well. So they have squad depth. Aoife Renan coming in and scoring that goal, and there are other players to come in. You see young Abby Cal from Eadstown coming in near the end. I mean, she's so young, but she was fearless. She's just running straight down the throats of the Dublin defenders. You've Ruth Dillon in there as well. These exciting young players. They're absolutely fearless. So that's squad depth, coupled with what I think is quite a favourable group, to be honest with you. I also wouldn't necessarily write off Waterford beating Kerry either. Waterford had a really, really good kind of 3/4 of a Division 1 campaign, surprised not enough. They had a really good Division 1 campaign. And Kerry, the Kerry team that I saw in Hawkfield that day,
yeah, they weren't right.
They weren't. And I thought Kildare probably should have beaten them. So I wouldn't write off it being Waterford. And, Kildare would be more than capable of taking care of Waterford. So, yeah, really looking forward to it. It should be a good championship.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's those first round ties, which will be confirmed next week. After that, I think are set for the weekend of Saturday 6th and Sunday 7th of June, isn't it? I think so. A couple of weeks away, and yeah, no doubt a couple of days off for the girls during the week, but back to the grindstone very soon indeed, and looking forward to seeing how Pat Sullivan's side can progress. They had great memories, as Tommy said, in last year's championship. That win in Armagh was one of the highlights of last summer from Kildare GAA point of view, and they certainly put it up then to Kerry as well in their backyard. So looking forward to that one in a couple of weeks. And so 50 minutes into the podcast, and we're going to move on now to some of our previews, and obviously that means Saturday evening's trip out west for the Kildare senior footballers in round 1 of the All-Ireland series. Yeah, a daunting prospect. Probably a draw that Kildare could have done without, although once they lost that game against Westmeath in Leinster, it was obviously going to be a difficult away tie no matter who they drew. But Richard, you're our historian on the Kildare GAA front, and history against Galway for Kildare. It's not good, to put it mildly. And I think it was mentioned, and you've mentioned it in the past, Larry Tompkins, I think, was man of the match the last time that Kildare defeated Galway back in 1985. So obviously not today nor yesterday. So a tough prospect. And of course, even history aside, Galway are a very, very strong side in their home garden. They'll be looking to bounce back after the Connacht final. It's a big, big ask for this Kildare side.
Yeah, I think it was up there with one of the toughest draws we could have got. And, again, another implication, as you alluded to, of losing to Westmeath. Like, Westmeath are facing a sellout game at home to Cavan in round 1, and they'll be confident going into that they can get a win. This kind of feels like knockout, but obviously it's not. It's a weird one. You kind of, we're so used to qualifiers over the years, and having to win and get on a run, but this one obviously isn't knockout, but it does feel a little bit like that. It is daunting. I mean, Galway are 10-1 on. With the bookies, I think the spread is something like 8 points. So that tells you everything you need to know about what people outside of Kildare are thinking in terms of this particular game, and on all known form, rightly so. I'm kind of, if you're clinging to anything, I think Roscommon showed that Galway have a vulnerability in defence when you run at them at pace. The challenge is that's not something Kildare have really been doing a lot of, and maybe we've lost quite a number of pacier players. Your Kevin Flynn's, your Paddy McDermott's, Daniel Flynn, people like that who would have possibly been ideal for this sort of scenario. Kildare obviously need to find a performance that's way above anything that they've shown so far, either in league or championship. Maybe the one in Tyrone, something like that, but that seems a long time ago now. I do have some question marks about Galway's mentality. They kind of had that Connacht final in their grasp, and just didn't seem to follow through in the end. I know that a lot of that is down to Roscommon themselves, obviously. Galway, they're a curious beast. Like they've if you look outside of Connacht this year, they haven't lost to anyone outside of those Connacht derbies. They lost the 2 league games they lost were, if I'm not mistaken, Mayo and Roscommon, and then they obviously lost the Connacht final. But all the other teams in Division 1 they were able to handle. So they are a curious beast. I think they're, but they've got so much strength around the areas where we're maybe a little bit weaker, as in, around midfield. They've got, the Paul Conroys, they've got Johnny Marr, Killian McDade, coming back around that area, around wing forward. They've got such strength in an area where Kildare are probably a little bit weak at the moment. So it's hard. I'm sure Tommy maybe can come up with a few reasons why we might win. I'm thinking back to some times from the past when we went to Derry after the Carlow debacle in 2018 in Owenbeg, produced a fantastic performance that day. But that was a different Kildare side, maybe a little bit a more talented Kildare side, and Derry are at a lower ebb than this Galway team obviously are. So I'm not particularly optimistic about it. I think I would hope that the shackles might come off a little bit, and we just go for it, and maybe we catch Galway a little bit. This isn't probably a game that excites Galway too much, so maybe we can catch Galway a little bit below par. Maybe they think they can coast through it a little bit, and maybe we can, if we have all of our injured players back at a higher level of fitness than they showed in Tullamore when they were clearly just coming back from injury. Maybe we can give it a rattle, but I think the bookie odds are kind of realistic at this point in time based on everything we know.
Potential Love Island contestants aside, it's obviously a very strong Galway team that we'll be facing, and maybe Damien Comer, who was a substitute in that Connacht final, the likes of he maybe will be ready to start as well, and he obviously will be a massive handful. But Tommy, in terms of the Kildare lineup, is there any changes that you'd like to see? And that obviously is difficult to say without having an in-depth knowledge of the fitness of various Kildare players who've been in and out of the side throughout the year. But in terms of the lineup, what would you like to see Brian Flanagan try on Saturday evening?
Well, a big loss against Westmeath are obviously the guys that were coming back from injury. You're obviously Alex didn't play half the game, and Colin Dalton only came on extra time, and Jack Robinson only came on second half. I'm not entirely sure about Ben McCormack's fitness at the moment. After his wonderful display against Laois, I think he got a bit of a bang then after that in training or something. So I'm hoping he would have shaken that off. But listen, to be completely honest with you, if those guys that I've mentioned, if they're fit, they play. You throw them in. Again, as you say, we're not a training. We don't know. There might be a tweak here, tweak there. The guys that are the actual sports scientists there will know that there's only 70% in these guys, whatever. But for me, if they're match fit, I put them in. I mean, how many times we see Jack Robinson coming in this year and putting up scores in 3-4 matches this year? He's come in, he's done the job. So I think he deserves to be in there, and he's such a quality forward. We're not that. I'm not going to say we're flush, but not doing too bad as forwards go. The two young lads that came in this year, Lockman and Cully, have done a job as well. When it's been asked of them, they've had a decent season. We know that Dara hasn't found the form that we would hope he had, but again, you're not going to drop him. I know some people would think that he probably should be dropped, but again, even in these last few weeks, you're thinking, I'd say he's just going like a bull in training, because he has to know he has that ability in him, and just things haven't worked out for him. But I mean, it's funny as well. You seen the Westmeath game, it wasn't for a lack of trying on his part. He was still taking the shots on. You see some lads that lose confidence, they might have had a couple of poor games. Suddenly then they'll pull back out. They won't take on that shot. They'll pass the ball off and thinking, geez, I don't want the sigh from the crowd. But Dara's still there, putting himself in front of everything. I really want to see him in it full forward, and I want to see him taking on the likes of Liam Silk, because we saw what Roscommon did last week by running straight through the middle. This wasn't Roscommon coming in from angles and crossover balls and trying to break the line. This was straight up the middle. I rewatched the game during the week after watching it live. I just couldn't get my head around it. And I think one of the main reasons was that Galway just expected them to do what most teams do, which is get to a certain point and then look to pass it off and somebody come on the shoulder. But instead, the person on the shoulder was beside him.
running along like that. So if Kildare can do that and isolate those defenders and just go for the heart of it, we just have a habit of playing balls into the corner. And we've had that's a big thing that we've seen Kildare games, and it's so frustrating to watch. Like, we're attacking and the ball's worked out to the wing. I know there's a reason behind it. I know it's to open up space and to open up the D, but it gives the opposition as well a chance to they have the full vision of you in the corner. They know you're going to eventually work it out. You're probably not going to cut in the line. So I'd like to see the likes of Dara getting on the ball, cutting through trying to cut through the heart. And you can be guaranteed damn sure that Galway will have worked very hard to stop that, because that was obviously one of the worst parts of their game. Galway weren't bad in that Connacht final. They were really good for about an hour. They were leading by 6 points with 8 minutes to go, and they took some wood. Now, the wind obviously played a big factor in the game as well, especially in the first half. Some of the 2-pointers Galway kicked, geez, very just. Shots that we wouldn't even take on. You're talking 50 yards out jobs, again, with that wind. But they were really good, Galway, at times. They genuinely were, and even the commentators were saying, it's like, Galway look sharp. They look like they're on it. So I'm really interested to see our matchups. The quality in the Galway forward line and the Galway midfield. It's not like you have one man to look after, two men to look after. They have threats absolutely everywhere. And it starts at the back with quality. It works all the way up. We all know with Shane Walsh. Comer will probably come back in after his performance the last day. I think he came in and scored 1-2 in his cameo. So who's going to mark Walsh? Sorry?
Finnerty. Rob Finnerty goes under the radar a lot as well.
But realistically, Finnerty is probably their main man, if you think about it. I mean, he is the one that racks up the scores, and he did in the league. He's a wand of a left boot on him as well. So you're taking Finnerty, Comer, Walsh. I mean, who picks up who? I thought Ryan Burke, by the way, had an excellent game against Westmeath on young Corcoran. I thought at times he was really close and tight to him. He kept shepherding him out away from goal. A lot of that Galway attack starts on the left as well, because they instinctively try to get the ball over towards Shane Walsh, and that's where he drifts, and he works as a player. So again, a lot of what he does is he'll work in on his left, and he'll work in tight on his left, and defenders are dragged towards him. Then he'll sharply cut out to his right, and there'll be somebody waiting for him to either take on a 2-shot or run. So that avenue down the left is something that Galway use. Now, I don't know whether they probably don't plan it, but that's just where the majority of their ball go. And I thought Ryan Burke, well, in the first half of that Westmeath game, he found himself over there because Mark Corcoran, and he blocked off a lot of avenues at times there. I thought he did really well. He has I don't know if you watch Ryan Burke when he's marking, he points up to the right. You ever see him doing that? If he's following his man towards the end line, he points up to try and get him over. It's a really funny thing, but it's effective. So I just think that's something that I think Kildare really need to look out for, is just that where those attacks start. And like, again, if they did it a lot, Galway. I'm not just picking this out as one or two examples. They did it a lot. A lot of their attacks came from that angle, and Roscommon doubled up on that side at one stage in the game because they recognised the threat, and then they smothered Galway for a while creating their own attacks. The reason Roscommon got through the middle, by the way, is also because they have unbelievable pace. So that's another reason how they're able to absolutely skin them. We do have a pace in certain areas of the field. We just need to utilise it. We need to find these lads. Colin Dalton, with his pace, but also his running ability. Let's just tell lads to be brave. And as soon as they see the D in sight, let's just get running. Try cut through. If it doesn't work something else. But don't respect them. Don't play around them and look for the perfect opportunity. Just bring the game to them.
Yeah, Tom, we can just stick with you just for a moment before we head back to Richard, just because you're our man on the terrace, as it were, when the rest of us are working at these games. And fair play to your devotion for being on the terrace there last Saturday in Nolan Park. You turned away from the two busy enough stands on either side to go stand almost on your own, apart from a few Kilkenny young lads. I think you were in a prime position to give a bit of abuse to a couple of umpires as well there. But anyway,
I heard as well that you mentioned it on the radio, Chair.
I can see you were pointing that finger like that. That's exactly what you were like there behind the goal that time for the think it was Morris Curtin dragged down. But,
Morris got dragged to the ground, and 2 minutes before that, the umpire and Mikey Butler were having the crack, and the umpire slapped him on the back, and two of them had a laugh and a joke and getting on well with Murphy, the goalkeeper. They're having a right old time with the umpires and giving Kildare nothing. So I was dead right to be shouting at.
That's the sort of detail we can't bring you from the press box. So that's why you were here, Tommy, to bring us the views from the terraces. But talking about those terraces, you're obviously going to be on the terrace on Saturday, and many Kildare supporters will be around you, because I suppose there's a lot of factors that will come into play. Obviously, the game being shown live on RTE as well as KFM, I should mention as well, for those who prefer the radio. But a Saturday evening game, you know, the price of hotels certainly will play into people who maybe would have had a night over and made a night of it. Even just parking around Pearse Stadium is not always the best and not always the most convenient. There'll be a lot of factors if people were kind of 50-50 sitting on the wall, sitting on the bench. And of course, look, no getting away from it. Obviously, Richard mentioned the bookies odds. It's a big uphill task for Kildare. Yeah, there's a lot to suggest there won't be a huge Kildare support. Obviously, the Kildare support this year has been dwindling, I suppose, at different stages. Hasn't been fantastic throughout the year. But, you know, it means a lot to these players to see any support at all in the crowd. And it can make a huge difference in a championship game. And, you know, even thinking back to that Westmeath game in Tullamore, was Kildare support completely outnumbered in that game. The maroon was everywhere to be looked. Yeah, so it's, how do you feel it? Besides telling our League Slip friends not to wear their club colours down to match the Galway colours, but how do you see the Kildare support on Saturday evening?
Yeah, it's looking like it'll be quite a small group. I'd imagine, like, you know, Club Kildare does, like, you'll always see a good few Club Kildare jackets knocking around. So you'll have the die-hard groups of people.
Tom Cross bus is travelling anyway.
Tom Cross is, I spoke to Tom last week. He's bringing a bus. As he said, it's been a long time since they missed a match. So he'll absolutely be bringing a bus. I think a few people have got in touch with him already. But just from doing a little poll online and stuff, it just doesn't seem. And I just asked a few people, and they're like, no, it's on RTE, or no. Or what's worse again is the comments of people saying, no, they're not playing well, or I don't want to go watch that, or why would I go? That question I saw coming in, sent to me on Twitter. Why would I go and watch that style of football? Because it's your county. That's why you should go. I mean, it's as unlikely as a win is on Saturday. What if they do it? You know, what if they beat Galway in Salt Hill, first round of the All-Ireland? You know, like the Leinster final, the Leinster under-20 final. You know, there was a small crowd there. But I guarantee it, like, how I was delighted we were outnumbered that day, because they were absolutely outnumbered about 10-1, and it was class. You know, being there surrounded by the opposition, and you won, you know, against the odds, and you're out in the field celebrating. So what if they do it on Saturday? I just think I understand how difficult it is to go to Salt Hill, especially to bring like the kids to Salt Hill. Accommodation is ridiculously expensive over there. It's unbelievable. Even to checking this morning, I think hotels are 350, 400 quid. Airbnbs are the same price. So it's a tough sell to bring people over. But at the same time, you know, we need to start building up the support that's gone. I mean, we're all fickle. You know, results will obviously do that. And, you know, you're kind of looking into the next couple of years, hoping that things do turn around a little bit for Kildare again, and we can start to bring supporters back. So I'm not expecting a huge Kildare crowd, but, you know, there will be some there, and those loyal ones are vocal as well. So hopefully there'll be a few knocking around Galway on Saturday night for a few pints. Well, either way, we'll enjoy it. I will say, as regards crowds, Jar, I don't know if I know where your spot is in the Hogan stand. It's quite difficult to see the lower deck of the stand, but Kildare had more supporters there than Dublin for the ladies. So if you think about it, up till maybe the 45th, 50th minute, that's when people would start to come in to watch the senior men. So if you're looking at the first half, the Dublin Kildare match, Kildare absolutely. I was in a big crowd of them, and they all bought tickets at short notice as well. Don't forget that was only the Sunday they realised that they were going to be in the Leinster final the following week, and these tickets were not selling out, but these tickets were going obviously for the Dublin Westmeath game. So I must say, fair play to the followers of Kildare LGFA, because, you know, it wasn't like there was 10,000 of them there, but there was more than Dublin. You know, and that's a great sign to go up to Crow Park to play against the Dublin senior ladies team and to outnumber them. So, and there was a lot of staunch Kildare supporters there. So fair play to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Richard, we can't, I suppose, talk about the Kildare footballers without mentioning maybe the Leinster Championship and events in Croke Park last Sunday. And I suppose, what were your feelings watching Westmeath do something that we have yearned to do so much, following on obviously from Louth 12 months previously? You noted, as it was, that I suppose that Kildare now have lost to the eventual Leinster champions in narrow semi-finals for the last couple of years, extra time this year against Westmeath. Does that give you a sense that maybe we're not a million miles away, or ultimately we've still lost those games, and there are times when it's felt throughout the season, through the league and through that game against Westmeath and Tullamore, that it does feel like a mile away and it might never be Kildare's day? But Louth and Westmeath have shown what's possible, even Westmeath doing it from Division 3 this year without gaining promotion. So a lot of things that we would have thought would have been impossible in terms of you think you'd have to be in Division 2 at least, or maybe pushing on to Division 1. Westmeath have showed that's not necessarily the case, and every game throws up an opportunity, and who knows what the future could hold for Kildare. And do those kind of successes give you hope that it could be Kildare's day in the future?
Yeah, there's a lot in that. I suppose the feelings were mixed, really. I think for the primary feeling was one, I was just sick.
That's not mixed.
Westmeath were there, Ronan Wallace collecting that trophy, and not us. But then they fully deserved it, and I mean, it just I think it was kind of a little bit of shock and awe in terms of we've known this Dublin team were coming to the end of the road, but this really felt like this was it. And I think what that means for the future, particularly when you think about it, is their older players were their star players on Sunday still, and they're probably not going to retain a good chunk of those lads. You can't see a Kieran Kilkenny and maybe Niall Scully coming back again for another year. So like there's the opportunity for teams in Leinster, and as you said, Louth and Westmeath have grasped it over the last couple of years. Meath probably expected to be climbing the steps this year, and they'll probably be favourites next year, and probably with a season in Division 1, they'll probably rightly be favourites next year for it. And where are we? We're kind of also rounds. We're not really putting ourselves in the mix. And people will say, we were the team that came closest to Westmeath, and I think we're clasping at straws a little bit there. It doesn't mean just because we maybe had a tighter extra time against them than Dublin did that makes us a better team, or we would have beaten Dublin necessarily. I think you've got to look at the mentality of that Westmeath team and the confidence that they showed, and also just technically how strong they were around midfield, where we're not so strong at the moment. We haven't been so strong. Would we have beaten Dublin in the same circumstances, coming down the stretch into extra time? I'm not sure we're mature enough to have done that necessarily. Obviously other people might have a different opinion on that. So although we were close against Westmeath, I don't think it necessarily means we're inches away from winning a provincial title. I think to put together the 3 wins that they put together, I think that would be beyond us. The equivalent of Kildare and then Dublin, I think that would be beyond us at the moment. But the opportunity is surely there. I mean, Westmeath have not won anything of significance at underage level. Fine, they've had a schools win this year, but Kildare have been winning things at underage level and being very competitive at underage level. We're in another minor final we're going to talk about shortly. We won the under 20. We've Nace have had school wins, etc., etc. So, there's no reason why we shouldn't be in the mix over the next couple of years. But we've got this temporary setback with Taunton Cup most likely next year in Division 3, so it's going to be difficult to push ourselves back into that. But the opportunity is clearly there for any of 5 or 6 teams in Leinster to go and win the provincial title, and that's great to see. I think the only thing I would caution is that no one's really saying because Westmeath won Leinster they're now an All-Ireland contender. Maybe they feel that themselves, but you wouldn't hear that from outside of the county. And I think that speaks to maybe the standard in Leinster a little bit with Dublin's demise, if you like. I think Division 3 team has just won the provincial title here. Maybe that's indicative of the overall standard in Leinster as much as anything at this point in time. So, we should be in there with a shout, and I think that's got to be the challenge for Kildare for next year, is to be in there with more of a shout and get ourselves into that final. Like, how many semi-finals have we lost at this point? It's ridiculous. Next year has to be the year to push on into the final, and we should be capable of doing that.
Yeah, Tommy, it should at the very least, mean a change in mindset, even among supporters, I suppose, as much as anything else, but among the players themselves as well. Because while Dublin were dominant, there was obviously that glass ceiling there, and starting out every year, as much as the players always said that they believed they could win Leinster, did they really? Certainly, talking to supporters, there wasn't much of a sense, through that decade that Kildare were ever going to topple that superb Dublin team. They're no longer there, and while Kildare, as Richard is saying there, absolutely have a lot of improving to do to catch even Westmeath or Meath or Louth as well. There's not that glass ceiling there, so there is an opportunity if Kildare can push on over the next couple of seasons. That maybe that Leinster glory could be there for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, that you have to look at it like that. You really do. I mean, we've been waiting for decades for Dublin to come back to the pack. I think so. I was the same as Richard. I was sick on Sunday, to be honest. I wasn't delighted for Westmeath. I wasn't happy that Dublin were beaten. I was sick. I didn't hang around after the ladies' match was over. I got out there as quickly as I could because I had no interest in sitting in the middle of Westmeath and Dublin fans and Leinster final that we weren't involved in. So I got back to the car. I actually watched most of the match. I got back to Kilcullen, watched in the hideout, and I found myself, I'd nearly prefer Dublin to win this. Just that I think it'd be easier to swallow. And then when Westmeath won it, I actually found myself getting thick, and I was disappointed. And I think the attitude in Kildare, I think if Meath won a Leinster this year, or if Louth won a Leinster this year, I think it'd be okay, fair enough. That's their rivals. They were we're on a par a few years ago. Kildare were getting there. I think the fact that it was Westmeath really hit home, and I think it hit home hard because Westmeath didn't get out of Division 3 this year because we brought them to extra time, because we pipped them last year in Connah's Park when they were going quite well at the same time, and then they turned around and on the big stage they were able to do it, and come back a few times. So you're thinking, why can't that be us? Why isn't that us? Why do they look so far ahead of us? How did they get that over the line? And why can't we figure out how to do that? How can Roscommon do it in Connacht? How can they get over the line like this? And I think there's a frustration there because it's Westmeath, and it really shifted the attitude a lot this week. That's why I think there is a bit of confusion, because in sport, in anything, we want results immediately, and we all did. We bought into the fact that it's going to take a couple of years for this young Kildare team to mature, and that they are quite young. But now suddenly Westmeath have done it, and they didn't have to.
With a new manager as well.
Roscommon with a new manager and with young players as well, and they didn't have to hang around for a few years. So I think that's where it's very much a why not us. And then the focus and the attention immediately comes back on the squad and on the management and on the setup in Kildare. And then all the questions come back in. I think if Dublin win that Leinster, those questions aren't there. But the fact that Westmeath did it, the fact that Westmeath are bringing huge crowds to games. I understand, by the way, there's a bandwagon thing and there's hype around it and all this kind of stuff. But again, it's how are they able to do it? And Ger, I just think that depressing is a very strong word, so I'm not going to say that. I just think it's extremely frustrating, and I genuinely felt I felt down because I'm just thinking I was jealous, I just felt down at myself, and I'm thinking, Jesus, Westmeath have come in through out of nowhere, and I wasn't surprised that they didn't get out of Division 3 because I always thought they were a little bit flaky. Suddenly they're finding these characters, and they're finding their young players are stepping up, and they look ridiculously fit. I was listening to Ray Connellan on the Off the Ball AM this morning, And first of all, he did say that how happy they were that they came over to Kildare, the Kildare game. He says because Kildare is such a dogged team that don't stop. So that was encouraging to hear that. And he's right in a way that, in fairness to the Kildare lads, they do go to the final whistle. But I'm listening to Kennellan talk, and he's so confident. And they were so confident, they even said before Dublin game, he was telling all his friends, we've been running all ball work, but running since the start of our training started at their tail end of last year. They knew that they were roaring fit, they were confident. And again, I'm thinking, why can't that be us? Why aren't, even if we're struggling at certain things, like our forwards aren't firing, and our defense can be, we're conceding so many scores, then why aren't we the fittest team? Why aren't we as fit as Westmeath, and why aren't we as conditioned as them? And these are the questions everybody else is asking. I'm not just pulling these questions out of thin air. And it all came from Westmeath winning last week. So it's amazing how the mindset will switch, and you will feel a pang of jealousy, a pang of kind of, God, this feels rotten. And you're just wondering, and that's why a lot of people might not be going to Galway as well, because they just feel like it's not worth my time and my money. But again, if Westmeath didn't win, I'm repeating myself, I'm going to stop saying it, but if Westmeath didn't win, we'd be talking about, the positives that we're trying to bring into this game and stuff, but it's in the back of our minds that it could have been us, because we waited for so bloody long, 25 years, even though they waited for 22. So that question, sorry, Jar, did come in when I asked earlier if anybody has any questions for the pod. Somebody did ask that exact question. How can Roscommon and Westmeath win a provincial title coming out of nowhere when we look quite far away from it at the moment? So I think we've done our best to say that we don't know.
Yeah, well, that's ultimately it. But look, the next chapter for the Kildare team will be Saturday evening in Pearse Stadium in Salt Hill. And just for people who aren't aware, I suppose, of the new structures, that round one in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship is spread over the next 2 weekends, over 8 games, of course. The 4 winners then will be drawn together. Sorry, there'll be 8 winners, obviously, and they'll be drawn together for 4 games in the winning group, and then the losers will be drawing, 8 losers will be drawn into 4 matches, and that'll be knockout football then at that stage. So basically, Kildare have 2 opportunities in the All-Ireland series, and if they were to fall to defeat on Saturday, they would be into a knockout tie to try and extend their season, and they'll be down to the luck of the draw again, really, then. But let's hope that Brian Flanagan's team can cause a huge upset, and maybe we will be talking about one of the great Kildare days maybe next week after a victory in Salt Hill. Certainly, we would love to be doing that. But anyway, so best of luck, wishes to those Kildare travelling contingent. Make yourself known on Saturday evening if you are down there, and get behind the team. And even if you can't make it, make your support known even on social media or different things like that. Certainly the players and management do take notice of things like that. So best wishes to Brian Flanagan and the team for Saturday evening. But after doing some reviews and previews, we're going to roll that all into one now when we talk about the minor footballers, because they were the one Kildare side who were victorious last week, and that has led to a game on Friday evening in Portlaoise. Tommy Constantine's side went to Louth last weekend, and it was a turn up for the books for Kildare teams. They found themselves in a really tough game, obviously in a away tie against a Louth side who certainly fancied themselves, who had support, who fancied themselves, and ultimately they found a way to get a win in really difficult circumstances. Yeah, they got a little bit of luck the way the ball fell for Jack Dorn to tuck away the goal, but he had to be there to stick it away, and he held his composure when the ball was looping up what probably felt like an age for him, and he stuck it away in the back of the net, and Kildare were able to see it off then in the final couple of minutes, even when Louth were coming on strong. So yeah, it was an excellent victory against Louth last week. Tommy, Richard, whoever you wants to take up that one, but it bodes well going into this final now on Friday.
Yeah, I don't mind taking that one. It was great to see Louth sickened.
Again.
They've beaten us in so many close games over the last couple of years, and I thought their manager was very unfair and unsporting afterwards, in basically saying we kicked it away, and we were the better team and all the rest of it. And
Richard, it was pathetic.
It was, yeah. I always thought putting the ball over the bar in the net was part of being the better team, one of the key ways it's measured, but clearly not in Louth at the moment. But yeah, I mean, this team has been kind of growing, I think, through the campaign, and a lot of similarities with the under-20s in terms of the kind of the calmness that they have. They've got a good structure about them, and I think I said it probably in relation to the under-20s previously as well. They have different players come to the fore in different games, and you see that in the forward line in particular, like Jack Riley, yeah, and Greg Kelly. And we're shooting the lights out in the first couple of games, and maybe we've gone a little bit quieter in the past couple of games, which would be a little bit of a worry. But then you've got Tobin and Kyo coming in the last couple of games and scoring well as well. So they've a good panel, and they're using that panel pretty well, and you can see the team kind of evolve as they go through it. So yeah, I mean, look, Louth did shoot those wides, but they were put under pressure for a lot of them. And Kildare, as I say, putting that ball over the bar in the net is a part of the game, and Kildare did that last week and emerged with the win. And it's not like they, Louth only beat them by a couple of points in Hawkfield in the group as well, and Kildare actually dominated a lot of that game. And Louth had the same faults, actually, if I recall, as well. In that one, they kicked a lot of wides. So I don't think this was I don't think it was a turn up for the books as such. I went there feeling it was kind of a 50-50 game. Obviously, it being at home in Louth, you'd kind of fancy them a little bit, but I think Louth had a big long break as well, hadn't they? They had 3 or 4 weeks since their last game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
In the lead up to that one, whereas Kildare had played in between. So, yeah,
that's gone against Kildare in previous years.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about the final. Tommy, I don't know if you have any thoughts on the Louth game first, maybe before we talk about the final.
Just that I thought they were great. I thought they never stopped. They were under serious pressure from a really good Louth team. I think that manager that spoke in his interview after the game, I think they needed to have a look at themselves. If you have a bunch of 15, 16, 17-year-olds taking on crazy shots with an absolute gale force wind hooking across the pitch, and you can't get a message onto them to be more calm and try work the ball in, that's on the management. I mean, it's not that. I mean, the words that he used was that the Kildare goal, it wasn't like it was good build-up play from Kildare. It was a lucky goal that got a deflection. There were 9 different people involved in that build. It was a brilliant move. Yes, he did go to tap it over the bar, and it did get a deflection. And yes, young Doran was in the right position to get that hand in. The Louth defenders weren't as sharp as him to get in and get that goal. Some of the points, look, I think you mentioned him already. I think Aidan Tobin's been fantastic since he came in the last few games. The young Allenwood man, I think he's been really good. He really takes the game. They just have quality all over the field. They really do. Greg Kelly is interesting. You mentioned him because he was shooting the lights out. Like, he was brilliant in those early matches against Meath and Wicklow, or Laois. But he seems to be working more as a playmaker now. He's coming out and he's winning a lot of ball. He's such a stylish footballer, and he's looking to pass the ball off. And again, that's just another example of these lads taking on different responsibilities. Owen Lyons is very actually, I think Owen Lyons is very similar to Daniel Colbert for the under-20s. He's very similar, actually,
really consistent,
really good player. Very similar players, the two of them as well. They have that same good running style with a lot of power in their play. So they deserve to win it, because those are the matches those are the results you deserve. When you don't stop going at it and constantly going at it. Like, look at that minor match, Cork and Kerry the other night. Like, that was just wonderful to watch. There were an absolute bag of wides in that game, and it was a horrible weather. But that was minor. 2 teams just lorrying into each other, and it was great to watch. And that's what this Kildare team are all about. They just want the football and run at them. I'd say Meath have been hanging around now for a couple of months, waiting for another crack at this Kildare team. So they went on some run. Meath lost their opening 2 games.
Yeah.
And they lost their opening 2 games. Then obviously they picked up the win against Laois that got them into the preliminary quarter-final. Then they beat...
scored 11 goals in 2 games in the
And was Wicklow and Offaly, wasn't it?
run up to the
Yeah,
semi-final.
5-16 in one game, 5-14 in another game. So they've won every match since then, including beating Dublin 2-14, 2-10, I think, in the last game, or something along those lines. But like, I mean, so their confidence is up, and they did have that match that was up in Meath that night. They had a lot of possession,
They
you know,
did,
and
yeah,
you could see by them that they had quality, and I'd say they were kicking themselves. So the difference is that Louth don't have is that this Meath team have another opportunity to what they would see as right the wrong. So it could be an absolutely cracking game, but it's going to be a big challenge for Kildare. Like, they're 2 evenly matched teams.
They are.
That 116 to 110 scoreline that Kildare was a great result to get in Meath as well, and a wonderful way to kind of get stuck into the championship. But it did slightly flatter them, and Meath were some of the wides they kicked, they were very panicky when they got in towards the full forward line.
Sure.
Again, you're watching it, you'll always give young lads that you'll use that as an excuse that they're young lads, they're just trying to play football, which is right. But they've had a couple of months to get that right. You know, going by their score lines up to now, they might have. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to Friday night. It should be a cracker.
Yeah, and Richard, I was speaking to team captain Charlie Doran after that game against Louth, who I think is an absolute top prospect. He looks to be a serious footballer at centre back. God, he's a big chap and he's a very good footballer. But as well as that, he referenced the golden line for all good Kildare teams. He mentioned it. It's a while since I heard any Kildare captain of any team mentioning it. Pre-season runs around the Curragh. That's what he said was the secret to success. And any good Kildare team down through the years has been no stranger to a visit to the Curragh for a few runs around there. So, yeah, that's what he referenced for before or after the game anyway. And look, it shows because they're a fit, strong side and they have a real burst of pace around the field. I mean, Tommy mentioned Aidan Tobin there and Liam Meskel as well. I always think he looks very like Ollie Lyons, a similar kind of style and stature of Ollie Lyons. And, you know, he has that electric burst of pace. But Keogh as well, King Keogh's come into the side from Castledermot as well in the last couple of games, and he's done superbly well. And that's meant Aidan Bergen has been missing. I'm not quite sure if he'll be available, but he's another very talented forward as well. So there's a lot to like about this.
Ryan is another like Paddy when he gets the head down.
Yes, God, he knows the Curragh definitely. That man can he will run all day.
Yeah.
But
no, I think this could be a real classic. I don't want to put too much pressure on, but that game up in Screen was just end-to-end attacking football. You spoke about the Munster final there, Tommy. That this was probably the best game I've been at underage, or one of them at least, this year so far. They both just put the head down and went for each other. An excellent game. I think Meath will have improved. I think we probably have a little bit as well since then. We've evolved, you know, in terms of even the personnel that are in the team at this point. Should be a cracker. I think it's kind of 50-50. I don't think anyone is particularly strong favourites. Maybe looking at the form and the previous result, Kildare maybe might edge it, you know, in terms of favouritism. But I think it's close to a 50-50. Should be a cracker down there in Portlaoise.
Yeah, absolutely. Friday evening at the slightly weird throw-in time of 7:45. So
I thought I was going to take Tommy again. Huh?
But we've had the trip up to Cavan and Parnell Park for doing the 20s in the last couple of weeks, so we didn't get that extra 5 minutes. Might have been handy for people making the way up, but a more easier trip down the road to Portlaoise, and we have an extra 5 minutes to find our way down there. So, yeah, 7:35 Friday evening. Very best wishes to Tommy Constantine and his young squad. And no matter what happens on Friday evening as well, they will enter the All-Ireland series, into the All-Ireland quarterfinals. Obviously, a victory and going in as Leinster champions would lead to theoretically an easier draw in the quarterfinal stages against the provincial runner-up. If Kildare win as a provincial runner-up themselves, they will be playing a provincial champions. Kerry, sorry. Yeah, well, so yeah, that would be a tough game. So definitely it would be a double boost if Kildare can win on Friday evening. They'd lift the trophy and give themselves an easier quarter-final draw then in the All-Ireland series. So, yeah, the very best of luck. And, yeah, it's still a big weekend ahead. 3 Kildare sides out in action this weekend, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. If you are keeping an eye on the Kildare Nationalist website, we'll have reports up as quick as we can after those matches on the website, and also, of course, full coverage in next Tuesday's paper. So looking forward to another busy weekend, and hopefully even maybe the weather is turning. We might see a little bit of sunshine, and this winter feel that's been there in the last week or so can be forgotten about, and we might see some sunshine over the weekend. So, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Actually, Jared, I meant to say it earlier. You had mentioned that obviously parking is a nightmare around Pearse Stadium. I put up a kind of a guide thing, and it's on social media. It's on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. But it does have the air codes of 5 or 6 parking spots. So obviously along that lower and upper Salt Hill Road, there is on-street parking. There's also a couple of car parks that are actually on the promenade. So if people are travelling and they're worried about parking, you can just type in some of those air codes, you should be able to find.
Yeah, I did see a post up from Wooly Parkinson on his thing earlier on this year about getting a parking ticket around the ground in Salt Hill. So if you are parking, do make sure that you're parking legally, although I'm not quite sure that late on a Saturday evening whether you would need a parking ticket or not, perhaps not. But yeah, just do check and be careful wherever you are parking that you are parked legally. They won't be dishing out parking fines if you aren't. So yeah. So the best of luck to the county lads, county teams over the weekend, and of course, very much at this stage of the year, still the focus so much on the county side. But last Friday evening, our thoughts began to turn to later in the summer because we held in Joe Mullen Motors in Naas, of course, the sponsor of the Senior Football Championship in Kildare, the draw for the 3 football championships, which will take place in August. The senior championship starts a little bit later than the junior and intermediate. So Tommy, if you have, absolutely thrown up on screen there. We have new structures to all 3 football championships this year, and eventually we got to a junior football championship draw. We won't mention anything further about I won't say anything more. So moving on anyway. So Group 1 of the Thorncross Kildare Junior Football Championship sees St. Kevin's, Rathcoffey, Robertstown and Reben. Group 2 then is Kappa, Ballykelly, Castlemitchell and Kildangan, and then at Garvin, Ballymore, Kill and Ardclough make up Group 3, and I have got them right this time, so thank you for those graphics, Tommy. But yeah, Tommy, what stands out to you there in those with those championship draws? Of course, top 2 in all 3 groups go through, and yeah, then there is also, you have those there anyway. Yeah, so each team plays each other twice. Top 2 teams go into the knockout stages, and the third first place teams go into an open draw, the 2 teams receiving a bye to the semi-finals. And we already discussed that at the time, Tommy. You're not too happy about the draw for a place or a draw out of the hat that will happen as well out of that. But what do you make of the actual draw itself?
Yeah, you're right. We mentioned that before. I'm very slow to be critical of anything as regards, because I know a lot of work they go in, a lot of research within for these draw changes, and I am absolutely happy with them and how they work out. So no, I'm not being critical, but I don't like the fact that if you do finish top of the group that you have to go into a hat to be picked out for the next one. That's by the by. The groups kind of sorted themselves out. The real groups in the end. I think the initial groups that were said. I think some people were happier with them than these, but sure, we won't talk about that. Sure.
I should say, but this is the absolute. Well, I know obviously there was a bit of confusion, but these are absolutely the right way the teams were pulled out of the hat and everything else. And this is what it was initially said, where it was incorrect. But yeah, this was absolutely, definitely the way that teams came out.
Mistakes
speed,
yeah, exactly. So so the groups I think there's competitive matches across all the groups. In fairness, when you look at them, they are very well spread out. Again, this also removes what we have seen in the old draws over the last couple of years, the big imbalance. I mean, you saw that. I think it was the year that Ellistown won it. They didn't really have a challenge. I think they've had one match against Robertstown, which would have been the closest team to challenge them. Whereas on the other group at the time, you had Grange and Milltown, and it was just very imbalanced. So I do like that the way they have the seeds and the way they have worked out. St. Kevin's will probably go in as favourites because obviously they've come down from intermediate, but also the form that they're picking up in the senior league at the moment. They've really had an impressive last 5 or 6 games, which kind of shows that they might be picking up a bit of form coming into the championship. Whereas you see the other end, Kappa and at Garvin are probably struggling slightly in Division 3. So they'll have a tough group though. St. Kevin's, I mean, Rathcoffey, Robertstown, and Ribben are in there as well. But Robertstown, they're getting Division 3 football. Rathcoffey are getting Division 3 football. I always think this is hugely important, that if you're a junior team and you're getting that higher level of standard of match, and I think Robertson and Coffey will put up the Kevin. So that could be a really good group. Same as Group 2, Kappa, Ballykelly, Castlemitchell, Kildangan. Kildangan have probably been definitely the story of Division 4 so far. Managed to hold on ahead of Castlemitchell into that top 4. The league was split last week, so they're now in the mix for a promotion spot. If they can pick up another couple of wins, it'll be difficult for them. But I mean, it's a great start. They've ran teams very close or beaten them. You know, you're looking at Monasterevin, Suncroft, Ballymore Eustace. You know, they've done well against all of those teams. So Kappa and Castlemitchell and Ballykelly, you know, that could be quite a tight group as well. Kappa are struggling slightly. I was a little bit surprised with that. I thought I'd expect to see a little bit more of them in the league. Could be missing players. I heard that David Lovely is back playing for Kappa. That'll be a huge boost for them after his injury last year. Probably somebody that I thought might have been sniffing around the edges of a Kildare squad or a development squad. I really think he's a fantastic midfielder. So hopefully he's fit for championship. Then at Garvan, Ballymore, Kill and Ardclough in Group 3. So obviously, realistically, you're looking at, you know, Kill, Ballymore at Garvan. Ballymore stuck down in Division 4 again this year. Isn't going to help them. They probably should have got out of that last year, but they didn't. So they're going in against that Garvan team who had a really good season last year, and a Kill team who have some very, very good young players coming through. As we've seen underage as well, the next couple of years could be quite exciting for them. So yeah, looking forward to that junior championship. It's definitely going to be tight. There's no real standout team like there has been, like a Grange last year, for example. So it should be a cracking championship.
Yeah, absolutely. So we move on to the intermediate championship, and I suppose you could say similar to that as well. Obviously, Salons were an outstanding team last year. It certainly looks much more competitive this year. Very hard to pick a winner. Richard, if you want to have a look through it, obviously the seeds are in this, and it's the same structure as the senior football championship as well. Slightly different with the seedings as well, I suppose, in the intermediate. Confi, who were relegated from senior, along with St. Lawrence's, who were the beaten finalists from last year. They are 2 of the 4 seeds, along with the beaten semi-finalists from last year, Milltown and 2 Mile House. And it was the man from the sponsor, the National Electrical Wholesalers, Larry Malone, who's one of the great characters of Kildare GAA. He was there to make the draw for this championship, and it's thrown up some interesting ties, Richard. And with only the top 2, of course, progressing this year, now not that trapdoor or that extra place in the third team potentially progressing into the main championship afterwards, it makes it very cutthroat through the group stages.
It does. I think that's what I like most about the new setup, and it was the same in junior as well. You know, you've got 3 games, and basically you need to win probably 2 of those, or you know, win the draw even might get you through. But you know, there's some groups here that you know you can just see that battle for second and third is going to be and first in some cases. Like I'm drawn to Group D to start with. You know, Castle Dermot in with a Rathangan team who I know Tommy rates very highly in terms of who's going to win out, and they're in with Ellistown and 2 Mile House. Like, you know, pick your 2 out of them. Very, very difficult. And then, you know, going back up, you've got Group A, you've got the League Slip Derby. Obviously, that's going to be fascinating. Have we determined yet who the seeds are? They definitely can't be Tommy. Yeah.
Yeah, got Civil War.
I personally would have thought it was Suncroft, but obviously that's a mistake somewhere there. But, you know, Straffan are a team that could cause some difficulties there for Conti and League Slip as well. That's not a slam dunk that the top 2 are going to go through there either. And then you're into Group B, and you've got, you know, local derby. Those teams are all kind of in and around same kind of areas. Local derbies between Towers and Monasterevin, Larry's and Kilcullen. Fascinating group, that one. You know, obviously you'd probably say Larry's with their good league form and will probably be favourites to come out of that. Towers, you know, are going to be up there as well. And then Group C, like, I mean, again, local derbies, Milltown, Ballyteague. You've got Grange coming up from junior. You know, Nerney have been competitive at intermediate the last few years as well. So, you know, it is going to be cutthroat. That's the word for it, I think. Trying to get into those top 2 spots, and certainly the last round of games. It's going to be fascinating when we get down to that.
That Group C, Richard, as well, Milltown and Grange. That's a repeat that they had some rivalry back when they were both battling, you know, junior when they both were getting out of Division 4, Division 3s. They
That's right.
had some tasty, spicy meetings. And
Yeah.
I'd say now they are really looking forward to getting stuck into each other again after a little bit of a break last year where they were able to cool off.
Yeah.
So
It's a very tough group for Grange, though, to come up from junior, isn't it? Like,
it really is, and Ernie going well too.
Yeah, I mean, Ballyteague, if Highland in particular is available, you know, they're going to be strong as well, I think.
Yeah. The way the fixtures fall as well could play a big part in the groups too. Theoretically, you could play a team in the opening round, but that same team in a fixture in round 3 could be very different.
Is that predetermined, I wonder, or?
I haven't seen the fixtures confirmed yet, so I'm not too sure yet as well. But of course, then as well, we have the introduction both at senior and intermediate of an intermediate A championship. So those sides who don't make those top 2 slots will go into that new championship, and that's going to add an element of intrigue as well, because that's something that teams have to take seriously, because you go into that quarter final. If you win that, you're in a semi-final then for an intermediate A championship. If you lose it, you're in a relegation semi-final. So either way, you're going to be forced into taking those games very, very seriously. So it certainly gives something. Once you get into a semi-final, if you've won that quarter-final, you surely want to go on and win a trophy. And then obviously if you're in a relegation semi-final, you have to pick up a win pretty quickly, because it's going to take a side to lose 3 games in a row then as well after the initial group stages to be relegated. So there'll be no complaints about the side who goes down either. Yeah. So we'll move on then to the Joe Mellon Motors, and we were in the home of the sponsors of the Senior Football Championship for the Straw, and Philip from Joe Mellon Motors was the man charged of pulling out the teams here. And of course the seeds, much more straightforward, I suppose. The Senior Football was just the 4 semi-finalists from last year, champions Athy, Sarsfields, Naas and Selbridge, the 4 sides who were kept separate. And yeah, again, it's some intriguing groups. I suppose all 4 seeds will be probably strong favourites to at least qualify, if not top their group as well. But who joins them in each of those groups is kind of wide open then.
Very much so. It's interesting to see Moorfield and Naas getting drawn together again. They've met a few times now over the last few years. The group's
kind of another one that seems to be always paired together.
That's right. Yeah, it is. Like the draw kind of worked out. As in the groups worked out in a way not that you'd expect, but like that's the value of putting seeds in there. You know that you're guaranteed kind of competitive with one kind of clear favourite from the group. I mean, if you take Group C for example, you have the county champions, and they're going up against the Kilcock team that are going really well in Division 3. They're 8 wins from 8. They're playing some brilliant football, put up some big scores. Raheens have been taking over very nicely in Division 1 this year, quietly enough. I'd say now a lot of those Raheens lads have probably thought that they've underperformed for the last couple of years, and they seem to be quietly confident this year. I'd be keeping a very close eye on how they get on in that group, because coming up against a Sallins team as well that they're struggling in Division 1, but the games that I've seen them play, they were unlucky to lose. So they won't, obviously they're coming off from intermediate, but a lot of people said last year when they won the intermediate that they'll probably be a top 6 senior side. People were genuinely saying that last year because they were the Division 1 football in them as well. I probably won't entirely rule out that. I can see them probably having a good chance of getting into the knockouts. Obviously they'll call Dalton back, they'll have Mangan back. They have a lot of decent players coming through as well. So that could be a really, really interesting group. Same as Group D, obviously if Clorinco, that'll be welcoming back. Jimmy Lynch, Andrew Hill, Jack Robinson will be back playing for them this year. They're going okay in Division 3, kind of slipped in the last couple of weeks. I don't know, I just heard early in the year that the McMonagles were travelling. I'm not sure if they're back or not yet, but if Clorinco have everybody available, they're not going to make anything easy for people in those groups. Same goes for Eadstown when they fall their hurlers back. Everybody hates playing Eadstown when they're full strength. They're really leader in the teams. And Moorfield are a team that are going extremely well in Division 1 at the moment. So that's going to set them up nicely, to have a decent league campaign. Group A, we're all talking about Selbridge at the moment because the way everybody looks at it is they don't have any players on the county panel, so they're able to fully focus on the league. And they're out on top at the moment. So that might give them a bit of a clearer head, maybe I'm probably contradicting myself now, but I think maybe there might be a little bit of pressure off this year because people just expect them to to not do it when it matters again this year, like they failed for the last few years. I think they're just going to be better this year. I think there'll be less pressure on them. So I'm looking forward to see how they get on the championship as well. So and the other one, obviously, Sarsfield's Carberry, Maynooth. That'll be that won't be simple either. I think Cara and Carberry had a good rattle at each other last year. In group, I think they were in Group C last year, could have been Group D as well. And Sarsfield's picking up a couple of results in Division 1, but they'd want to be going better. Obviously, they're going to get likes of Ben Lopeman back as well. Callum Bolton back, yeah. So it's just I think obviously Naas are going to be clear favourites. I tell you, your 4 seeds are your 4 favourites, and your 4 likely semi-finalists. It's probably the first year in a while though that I can see an upset somewhere along the line. I just think a lot of teams are getting better. There's a good standard of club football in Kildare this year from what I've seen in a few of those league matches. I'm just taking Raheens as an example that they are ticking along quite nicely at the moment. So we'll see how the league finishes out. But yeah, we have a long time to wait till that championship, Jar.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The week ending August 23rd. So yeah, very, very long wait for the Senior Football Championship. The Intermediate and Junior starts a couple of weeks earlier on the week ending the 9th of August. So yeah, lots to look forward to. But yeah, plenty of discussion points between now and then across all 3 championships, and we will certainly look forward to those games when it is time for us to really focus on those club championships. But before all those championships will be contested, there's still some vital league games to be played. We're just about reaching the midway point, I think, Tommy, across the first 3 divisions anyway, and 3 and 4, and Division 4 has had their split as well at the top. So yeah, there are the 4 league tables there, all the results from last weekend as well. Plenty of games played, and yeah, the 4 divisions now, I suppose, really taking shape. And just looking at Division 1, first off there, Tommy, you mentioned, gave a good mention there for the Raheens, who were very prominently placed there at second. But my eye is drawn to the bottom of that table when you look at, I'd say all the way up even to St. Lawrence is in 6th place with 7 points. They're only 2 points ahead of Milltown in 11th place in the relegation places. Salon's bottom of the table, they're only on 4 points. So you have 3 points basically separating the, more than just the bottom half, the bottom half plus that one of the top half as well. So it's incredibly tight there. Clane are down there. They do have a game in hand. Although that is against Naas, so that certainly will be as tough a game in hand as it gets. But it's incredibly close down there, and it will be hard to pick the 2 sides who are going to fall through that relegation trapdoor at the moment.
Yeah. In fairness to a tie, they've picked up wins in the last 3 or 4 weeks. They were struggling. They were rock bottom of Division 1. It was quite a startling thing to see. But obviously Sean Gannon has he's got things together in there. Again, they're missing a lot of players, between the under-20s and the seniors and injuries. They're starting to get players back. Again, the value of a club putting up team sheets. We get an insight into who's playing these matches as opposed to relying on match reports. So that's great to see. The Sarsfields do the same. Morphy, a lot of them do it. But Ataya picked up some really important wins because, as you say, it's getting really tight there now. I genuinely think Salons are probably unlucky to be down there with. You can see by their score difference. They're -12. There's teams above them -35, -27, -21. They've been involved in some tight games. Milltown have had
that was a huge win for. Sorry, that was a huge win for Salons there against Clane, because obviously it pulls Clane back into that as well. Had Salons lost that and Clane got on to 7 points and Salons were on 2, they'd almost be cut adrift, but with still a couple of games to go, still plenty of games to go. But that win for Salons drags Clane right back into it and makes it very tight down there. Really,
it does. And do you know what the number that I look at every year is that 5 points, because you'll always see a team on 5 points and they're staying above the waterline and they're just about surviving. It's the teams down the bottom. I take Allenwood last year and kind of trying to think of other teams that you'd see even in the different divisions that are on 0 points or 2 points, and 5 seems like it seems like a hard target to reach. So Salon's picking up that extra win, getting to the 4, just staying there. I wouldn't rule out, you don't know who's going to get relegated. It's exactly as you said. It could come any of the bottom 6, 7 teams could probably get relegated. So I'm dreading the final week when I have to do those bloody permutations. So make sure you have your score difference correct. Jeez, if this table could just sort itself out, that'd be grand.
But like Richard, even talking about the tightness of the table, look at the tightness of those results. Okay, Selbridge had a good win over St. Lawrence's, as you probably expected them going so well. Salon's convincing winners there against Clane. But after that, like there's only, 2 points for a Tide beating Maynooth, a 2-point win for Naas over Johnstown Bridge, just a point for Sarsfields over Milltown when Milltown came storming back into that game in the second half. And then a draw between Murfield and Raheens. And, on any given day, I think nearly any team in that division could beat the other.
Yeah, it is highly competitive, and you get arguments at times, and one I tend to go along with in terms of maybe the senior championship should be reduced from the current 16 teams, but then you see the senior league, you've got 12 teams operating there, and it's so tight, and as you say, anyone could almost beat anyone from one game to the other. So maybe something around 10 to 12 teams is the right number for a senior championship even. But yeah, I mean, I've been very impressed, not having seen a lot of games, but just at the consistency of Raheens. They do seem to be doing something different this year in terms of that, ability to grind out results every week. They tended to be a little bit inconsistent in the past. So I think that's been particularly impressive. And it's fascinating, really. And you've seen some of the bigger teams with High and Sarsfields with poor starts, but starting to get a bit of a run together now. So all auguring well for the championship later on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Moving on then to Division 2, there was the top of the table clash there between Leixlip and Allenwood, and Leixlip ended Allenwood's winning start to the season after winning 6 in a row. Leixlip defeated Allenwood, so again, it's very tight up the top there. That certainly pulls Allenwood back into the chasing pack, and teams like Ratangan, Round Towers, Ellisdown, Cara, Grange, maybe even all the way down to Carbery, although it's maybe a bit of a stretch, Carbery and 2 Mile House, but certainly from some Grange and 7th up there, they still will be dreaming of sneaking into that top 2 to get promotion.
Yeah, very, very tight. In fairness, the Allenwood were flying until that Leixlip result. But again, a great result for Leixlip. But it was that start to the league campaign is so important for Allenwood. They have a lot of their top players now kind of get fit and going well. Joey Cunningham didn't play much under 20s, but he's starting to get back into fitness now, and he's going to be obviously a huge asset for them come championship or possibly even the end of the league. I don't know, maybe he has kicked a ball recently for the club. But again, there's things like that. But as you say, like it's anybody's good chance at all to get in there. Look at those bottom teams, like Evestown, Confi seemed like they're absolutely destined for the drop. And then they picked up a win against Evestown, and they still have to play Castledermot, I think. So there's matches there that it could get nice and tight. 2 Mile House have been kind of tipping along, picking up important wins here or there just to keep their head above water. Next couple of rounds now will be quite important. It's a bit of a mixed, broken couple of weeks with this league campaign. I think there was a full round of fixtures scheduled for Friday night, but fair play to Kildare GAA. They obviously have gone about rescheduling them because of the minor final. To give people a chance to go to that, so hopefully people take advantage of that and go to Portlaoise. But yeah, we'll get a better view on it now in the next couple of weeks. That's it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then we just quickly move on then to Division 3 as well. There's no stopping Kilcock at the moment. They made an 8 from 8 with a victory over Clougharinco. But yeah, that Clougharinco side currently in mid-table Division 3, but as Tommy kind of mentioned earlier, when they come around the championship and get their county players back, they'll be a different prospect altogether. But yeah, Nurney flying great guns there as well. That was a good win against Rathcoffey, and they're currently in 2nd place. But also St. Kevin's as well. They really have recovered after a slow start, and they too had another victory and quite a sizable one too against Robertson at the week. Well, that was actually midweek last just Tuesday gone. Yeah, just yesterday, was it? Yeah,
it was. It was last night. That was a big win for St. Kevin's. I mentioned it earlier. I think they've definitely either won 5 in a row or 4 of the last 5, but they've really got their act together. Kilcock, I was looking at it earlier and thinking Asher there is safe. Kilcock can be caught. Kilcock can miss out on promotion, as unlikely as it looks. They still have to play Nurney, and they have to play Straffan, and they have to play Kilcullen. And they've beaten St. Kevin's. So St. Kevin's likely won't knock Kilcock out, even though St. Kevin's can get in there. But Strafford can knock Kilcock out. So if Kilcock slip, I know this sounds crazy, but because of the teams that they're playing, Early going well, Strafford going well, Kilcullen are going well at the moment too. If Kilcock slip up all of those matches, I'll have to go against them. But there is a way of them slipping up, just so people, in case people think that Division 3 is wrapped up. I was sad enough to check it out earlier.
You're going to be putting a hex on in there. The people at Kilcock, you're already after angering people of league slip now, and now you're moved on to Kilcock. You won't be allowed to go past Clane there on your way up towards the north part of the county at all. You'll be barred from the north of the county. But yeah, Kilcock as well. I just wonder, Shane Farrell just popped into my head. Obviously, he's returned and he took a part fairly vigorously in the warm-up against Westmeath and Tullamore. I wonder would he be an ace in the pack for Brian Flanagan on Saturday evening in Galway. But yeah, certainly he's doing well at club level, and it's been great to hear about him. I haven't quite seen him back on the pitch yet, but have heard about him, and he's going well. And yeah, he's a big boost to Kilcock, and again, he will certainly add to their prospects come the senior championship time, and already absolutely flying down in Division 3. I just finally then to mention Division 4, just a couple of games there. Obviously, the split has happened there between the top and bottom section, but Tom, you mentioned Kildangan earlier in the programme. They certainly put it up to Monasterevin, only losing by a single point there. That was a superb performance. And then Suncroft big winners against Ballykelly.
Yeah, Kildangan, I mean, there's people in Kildangan that have been telling me back when they dropped themselves back to the reserve championship, they were saying we'll be back. We have some really good young players coming through. We have good structures in place. And then when they did come back last year, they were saying, yeah, we're still very young, but keep an eye on us. And a lot of these players are starting to develop now. Apparently, I think they've had a few transfers coming in as well. But yeah, fair play to them. And they're a good example, of if a club is struggling and they're struggling for numbers and the right structures are in place at underage, that there's ways back and to get into contention and to see them, get into that top section. And kind of hold draw. Now they'll have to go. What happens now is in each section they all play each other once again. So Kildangan will play Ballymore, Suncroft, Monasterevin again. One more time to see who finishes in the top two. But either way, I mean, it's great preparation for them again for a young side.
4 wins out of 7 as some going, and look at their scoring difference as well.
Exactly. Well, now I will say their scoring difference. They got the chance to hockey Ardclough before anybody else did, before Ardclough pulled out of the group of the league. Enough. So Ardclough have obviously they've dropped out of league after round 2 or 3, I think, but I'm pretty sure Kildangan got a chance to give them their beating before they did.
Yeah, but then only losing by a point to Monasterevin is
been brilliant.
Some level of improvement over the last
year.
So
I'm pretty sure they beat Ballymore Eustace by a point or two. I mean, that's massive. You said that last year. Kildangan would beat Ballymore Eustace in the senior leagues. You have to hand it to them. Probably more worrying now for Ballymore, but they've picked up their 5 wins as well, and they're right in the mix for it. So we shall see over the coming weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly as well, I think over the next couple of weeks or even until the end of the league campaign, I think the football is going to alternate on weekends with the hurling. So maybe we'll have more of a look at the hurling games now that they will be played on the weekends as well. Previously, I think they've always been on a kind of a Tuesday or Wednesday evening, but the fact that they'll be on the weekends now will give us maybe an opportunity to see more of those games in the coming weeks, and we'll maybe have more of a discussion on them. And obviously, the county players from the hurling side of things will be filtering back through to their clubs after this weekend as well, or maybe a bit of a break for us. Certainly, they deserve a couple of weeks off after the efforts they put in. But yeah, that's about it then for the GAA. Just a couple of things to mention before we wrap up on this bumper edition of the Shortgrass Kildare Nationalist Sports Podcast. Best wishes to Allenwood Celtic on the soccer front. They have their huge fundraiser. An incredible amount of work has gone into the organisation of the game that they are hosting on their home pitch at Allenwood Celtic on Saturday. Unfortunately, we'll be all on our way down to Galway, so we won't get to see. There would have been a bit something for all of us three there. Yakubu there, the former Everton striker, Yap Stam, Wes Brown, Brian McClare there for the Man United smug there in the middle, and then Richard, of course, Jermaine Beckford as well, who has a season with Everton too. Yeah, we could have had him there. There's even McAteer then as well, and Pennant as well for Liverpool supporters. So there's something for everybody on Saturday afternoon. It looks like it's going to be a fantastic occasion, and I know there are still tickets available. They're expecting pretty much a sellout crowd, so if you are still 50-50 about going, head over to Eventbrite, search for that event and get your ticket pretty quickly, because I'd say it probably will sell out before the Saturday comes around. There's also a gala event as well in the Cadine Hotel on when all those Premier League stars will be attending on Saturday evening. And I believe it's Celtic special as well on the Friday evening with the likes of Cillian Petrov, Brian McClare and John Hartson too. So yeah, plenty happening around that event, and best wishes indeed to Allenwood Celtic. It's going to be a busy old day out that direction as well, because heading through Kilmeague, I believe on Saturday afternoon, is the Ross Talton, which of course is Ireland's main cycle race, and that is getting underway today, Wednesday, as we record, a 5-day tour of Ireland. And yeah, as I said, it will be going through Kildare and around Kilmeague, I think, on Saturday afternoon, and also on Saturday and Sunday this weekend as well, Guineas weekend in the Curragh. So it's all go this time of the year, lads. Plenty happening, no matter what your sport is. Plenty to be enjoyed over the weekend. The weather getting better. It might feel like summer, but we need a couple of Kildare wins this weekend. I think they're really round things off. We'll probably be going to the weekend in hope more than expectation. Going to be tough one, certainly, for the senior footballers and the hurlers. Hopefully the minors can maybe lift some silverware. It's just the 7th time that the Kildare minors and either the under-20s or 21s have reached the Leinster final in the same year, and only twice previously in 1965 and 2013 have Kildare won minor titles at those two grades. So a little bit of history potentially in store if Tommy Constantine's team can get the job done. But yeah, busy weekend ahead, lads. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. George, one more thing as well, just when we went live, I don't know if you heard about this, the National League. So that's been announced. Obviously, Newbridgetown going to be involved in group, and this is isn't this kind of like it's going to be fully rolled out in 2027?
Yeah, so this is an abridged version, I suppose, if you like. This obviously been split into 3 groups, so this is a kind of shortened season, and I think Newbridge in that group, they will play home and away ties against the other 4 sides who are there: CK United, Killarney Celtic, UCC Soccer, and Villa FC, who are this weekend, I think, actually in Kildare as well. They play Bush Celtic this weekend in the FAI Junior Cup. That was a game that was called off a couple of weeks ago, and they're the Waterford side who will be playing in Kildare. But yeah, had some long trips there. But Newbridgetown, that starts, I think, in June. Is it towards the end of June? So it'll roll around fairly quickly as well. And Newbridgetown being busily preparing for that. And yeah, that'll be certainly another avenue for soccer lovers to see pretty high level of football in the county too.
Yep. See, Home Farm DCU. Do you remember when they were Home Farm Everton?
I do. I went to see Home Farm Everton and Everton playing. Yeah, they were sponsored by Everton across the front of the jersey at one stage as well. Yeah.
I remember when when Castle Villa were playing in the Leinster Senior League. I remember going up. I used to love the trip to playing Home Farm because it was one of the very few grounds that had a stand. And I'd be growing up reading all these, fiction books, these kids' books of, lads in school in the UK and playing for their big football, and then going to these big stadiums. And I'd be going up to Dublin following my father was managing Castle Villa, and you go into Home Farm and you see a stand and you're like, oh my God. The same as playing in Newbridgetown. If you were playing an under-10 cup final, you'd play it in Station Road. And the fact there was a stand there was just mind-blowing, So, good memories there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully this generation of Newbridgetown players will be ready for the challenge that lies ahead. But yeah, some exciting times ahead. But yeah, I think after over 2 hours, we'd have to get Pat Costello back in the host seat here, because he has a bit more control than you lads. We've gone on probably for a record-breaking podcast here, well over 2 hours. But yeah, there's been plenty to talk about, and probably more that we could have spoken about as well. But yeah, it was a really busy time of the year. But
only enough, Jared. It takes about 2 hours to get the call. So
yeah, well,
you can listen to us the whole way.
Hopefully, by the time we listen to this, where Kildare have been crowned Leinster Minor champions, and yeah, this is a little have kept you company just as you're pulling in to park up there in front of Pearse Stadium.
Exactly.
The bit about parking will be no use, maybe, if you've just already parked up. So. But yeah, we'll leave it there. Thanks to Richard. Thanks to Tommy. We'll be back hopefully next week to reflect on that very busy weekend ahead. But for now, it's been the Short Grass Kildare National Sports Podcast.